Hey everyone, so we're live. Yep. Oh, actually, now we're live. So obviously, we're just gonna give us a couple minutes there, folks. Bear with us. We're trying to get this information spread out to all of our social media platforms. But as you can see, we got Tim Moen, leader of the Libertarian Party of Canada, with us today. A man that's been a friend of mine for many years now. And trust me, when you're talking about a conversation that we're going to have today in regards to mass immigration or the borders, yeah, you're going to get a whole lot of nuanced conversation and dialogue rather than the typical, 30-second sound bites or talking points from those from the established media or the established ruling class in this country. This is going to get your mind actually thinking properly about the issue, where you don't feel necessarily that you have to align on one side or the other in terms of politics, but where you can decide that you can do something based on actual principles rather than, some conformity or collectivist ideology. Now we're going to talk about issues from an individual perspective and how it pertains. What does mass immigration mean? Obviously, as libertarians, and Tim will definitely agree with me, I'm sure, on this, is I have no problem. I take no issue with people traveling freely around this big, gigantic globe. The problem is, of course, as most of you realize, is we don't live in anything that's remotely resembling a free society, right? We live in a top-down authoritarian structure that has the capacity and the ability to forcefully redistribute the incomes and the wealth of those of us in our particular farm, in our plantation that we call Canada. So as much as, like I say, if people want to come to this particular plantation, normally I wouldn't have a problem with that if there wasn't this gigantic overarching state that gets to take and plunder from me to subsidize people that are coming. So I would say this, I hold my values to be completely consistent, because I would say this even for domestic Canadians, the ones that are already here. Sure. I don't even want my income to be forcefully redistributed to them. So to me, it's reducing harm. And Tim Tim, this is a man who is, and I'll just let you know, those of you who are not familiar with him, he is a firefighter and he's a first responder as far as ambulance service. I believe you're, what would you call it?
I'm a paramedic. I'm a firefighter and a paramedic. Yeah.
Right. So you're a guy that, you're all about not causing harm, or at least do what you can in the moment when you're given the opportunity to at least reduce the amount of harm, or, reduce the amount of pain that's inflicted on your patients. And what we're talking about today, obviously, is not necessarily going to be a patient that's a reflection of someone that's been involved in an accident per se. But we're talking about the Canadian citizen, those of us that do live on this big plantation called Canada. And really, at the end of the day, and I'm sure you have the same concerns as I do, is what can we do to kind of at least reduce the amount of harm inflicted on the Canadian people?
No, you're absolutely right. I got into politics for the same reason I got into firefighting. In my day job, I deal with mindlessly destructive forces that destroy life, health, and property. And, that's what I do in the political realm too. There's no more destructive force, as far as I can see, than government intervention. And that's why, I did what I did. I resigned from my position, cashed in my pension to promote these principles. And so the question then is, okay, well, what do we do? How do we do this? How do we roll back the state? And my thinking on this, and I'm willing to have my mind changed, is that government is downstream from culture. And libertarians have always said this. We often get a bad rap. People say, libertarians, you're not pragmatic. You don't understand that culture is what matters, right? And then they go on to describe how we need government to do more things about culture. Well, no, that's the exact culture that we're trying to counteract. Libertarians have long understood that the reason we have a big state is because people keep demanding it. Government is downstream from culture. And so our job has always been to try to convince people to disabuse their statism and to embrace liberty and to live liberty in their own personal lives and to promote it. And, so this is an educational, this is a proselytizing process. We're trying to create more libertarians, because I think that's the only way we get a smaller government, is if we have a tipping point of libertarians that demand liberty or death. And we don't get it by winning seats and winning votes and winning elections and that sort of thing. Culture is what matters. Yeah. So that's why I guess I do what I do.
Yeah, hey, you know what? And I totally agree with you, Tim, 100% there. Actually, I'm just going to paint a little scenario here to kind of get us all up to speed and where my mind is at in terms of this. So let's just picture a scenario that I don't normally use a particular bank. I find it to be like, not beneficial to the customers, very corrupt. Some people in the back room, they rob or they open the vault, they plunder the people. And it's like, that's a bad place to be. But someday, just by sheer necessity, let's say, is there's all the rest of the banks, all the avenues, I should say, to all the other banks or institutions, banking institutions around the world, I've been restricted from. And the only thing left is this one place. It's like everyone seems to have to be congregating to this one bank. I'm standing in the bank someday, and as a libertarian, if someone stepped in with a black ski mask on and they decided they're going to rob that bank. Now, what could I, as a libertarian that's, places the non-aggression principle and the fact that, hey, this isn't my bank, right? And in reality, actually, I could remain in a neutral position. And I believe that actually would be in as far as the principles as a libertarian is like, yeah, take a neutral stance. Don't pick either side. I'm not choosing to defend the bank. And I sure as shit, I'm not going to be on the side of the bank robber. But here I am. I find myself in some weird chance circumstance that I'm in this particular place. Now, like I say, under a proper libertarian philosophy, non-aggression principle, so I could stand back and have nothing to do with that whole thing and how it played out. And I would still 100% be aligned with my principled position as far as a libertarian. So I would be fine. And I could live out the rest of my days knowing that it was a good thing that I still remained neutral. But what if, but the other option might be if I could somehow, or if I knew that I had the competence or the skills to wrestle the gun away, not to just save, the banksters, but to save all the other people that are within there that aren't the bankers, that aren't maybe some of the tellers, right? That aren't necessarily the ones that are ruling the institutions, but are just, once again, helpless, or even if somewhat participant victims in some way. To me, is what government represents, just like the bank robber, is that big gun in the room. They want to use force and violence as the ultimate means to the end. To me, I don't want to pick up the gun. Just same with government, same in regards to the immigration, because immigration it's a government initiative, folks. Mass immigration has nothing to do with the free movement of people, right? And the temporary foreign worker program is not a matter of free movement of people. Those are government initiatives. So that's the government that's picking up the gun and deciding who gets to come and go. So that's not anything as representative of the free market. But to me, if that's going to cause more harm, because that's the other people, all the people within the bank, well, if that bank gets robbed, well, then all of a sudden, all the savings of all the people that had nothing to do with it, but they were just, maybe customers of the bank. Well, if I can pick up that gun and rather than point it at everyone else other than that bank robber, the only thing I would want to do at that point would be, if I'm going to pick up the gun, is at least hold it to that bank robber and say, you're no longer in possession of any power or authority to now dictate things. I'm not going to use the gun necessarily. The only threat I want to do is to de-escalate. So step the hell away and everything will be calm. It'll be peaceful. And then we can all go better daily lives. But at that particular time, that's how I feel now in terms of this push for mass immigration. As a libertarian, I feel this damn compulsion and this necessity to say somebody's going to have to. I don't want to sit on the sidelines anymore. As much as I realize if I do, I'm still adherent to the principles of libertarianism, and I recognize that intrinsically. And the people that do still want to sit in the sidelines, I'm never going to say that. I would never try to align them as being representatives of the thief, right, or the government. I'm saying I'm fine with that. But somebody, if that's actually going to take place, if a robbery is taking place, somebody really should do it, right?
Right. So I'm confused. Is the robber the immigrants or is the robber government?
No, the government. No, not the immigrants.
Okay.
The immigrants are just, they're just, I would consider the immigrants, let's say that robber left the bank and then just started redistributing that money around to be.
Right.
I would say that the immigrants are just those who are benefiting from the plundering, from that robbery. Because no, the immigrants were the one that showed up. So to me, yes, no. That's why I want to clarify my position when we're talking about mass immigration. I don't blame people that want to come to this country. I have no, matter of fact, like I say, I take no issue. If we didn't have top-down government that had, once again, that were the ultimate arbiters and deciders that who got to come and go in this country, and if we didn't live in a world where there are 200 or so states, I'd be all for the free movement of people, which I know you align with and most of the libertarians do. But My thing is where I've severed some of my relationships with some of the libertarians in the past, because we've tried to argue these things out and we couldn't seem to find any common ground, is I have to deal with the real world. That has always been the thing with me, is I love the ideas and like say, whether it came from religious aspects in my past or some of these state initiatives, is utopian sounds good, but once again, I have to deal with the real world that I live in. And the real world that I live in suggests that government is now the ultimate arbiter and decider of who gets to come and go, right? People that do have that gun in the room. It's like, I don't want that to be. I want the free market to be the decider. Like, I want free people who are going to be personally responsible and accountable for their actions and their deeds. I want those people, right? So private sponsorship of immigration, totally on board with. But once again, even that, unfortunately, is still run through a government program. So you still don't even get that kind of universal consistency when it's through a top-down state. But go ahead, Tim.
Well, I was going to ask you, how do you deal with the same line of thinking in every other aspect of government control then, right? So an argument, you can make the same argument about public schools. Well, the utopian in me says, yeah, let's abolish public schools, but listen, maybe we can do something to free up the curriculum a little bit. Or central banking, right? Alan Greenspan was an Ayn Randian objectivist who was totally against central bank, and then he became the head of the Federal Reserve, and he was then saying, well, pragmatism dictates that we can't go back to the gold standard. We have to do this. Yes, in abstract philosophical terms, central banking ought to be abolished, but we live in the real world here, so we just have to do these policies, right? So you can you can be an apologist for the status quo very quickly by taking that stance, by saying, listen, we live in the real world, and pragmatism dictates that we just have to do the best we can with the circumstances we're given. I am sympathetic to that to some extent, right? That there are certainly problems with immigration, right? But I think a lot of people that are scared of immigration are probably arguing against it for the wrong reason. So maybe outline what your reasons are, what the danger of mass immigration are. We could go down the list of things and maybe discuss each kind of point of from there.
Perfect. Yeah, no, that's a good idea, Tim, actually. And like I say, I definitely agree with you on a lot of the areas, but like I say, and the pragmatism, it is a hard thing to function through, because like you, I predominantly, my brain tells me I should go to that universally consistent stance. And I totally get it. But once again, I can't escape the visualization of me in a place where I have the opportunity to act, right? To maybe, right? And it's like, as a person, I'm just like you. If you saw someone bleeding out on the side of the road, you would have that automatic compulsion to try to act. There might be some extenuating circumstances that you're not even aware of, but your immediate compulsion at that particular time would be that I want to act. But I get it. That's why we're having this discussion today, so that we can have that sober second thought before we overact, right? Or react in an inappropriate manner. So that's good. That's why this is a great conversation. But let's just start out first and foremost, as far as when we talk about economics, let's just break it down to wages. Because as we know, a lot of these so-called trade agreements, I mean, they talk about them, they use these monikers or these terms as free trade. But as you know, if you actually read or studied the language contained within them, there's nothing free about these trades, right? It's government to government. It's all kinds of tariffs and subsidies, and there's nothing free. But what it is they find a way that's more conducive with those who are participants of the economy, and those that are the dominant participants are the ones that realize that, hey, if we get government favor, we're now going to be the representation of that monopoly in the business or the economic segment of our society. So they've all kind of raced it down to, like, they have to feed at the trough. As we all know, I'm saying we're never going to get out from the fact that everyone's now feeding this big gigantic trough, because the trough has been created and everyone's feeding at it. I mean, you before you would even try to take the trough away, is you better have somewhere else where they can feed from. That's why I'm saying we should offer better opportunities. So private spot. So lead by example, as far as showing that rather than using government for economic needs, is if you can do it through private sponsorship. But that's the thing. Even if I would want to promote people using private economic fundamentals as the means for bringing people from different parts of the world to here, is we can't function even under that environment. Even if I said, let's do that instead, well, we have this giant thing called government that will constantly impose its will, its mandate, and its edict on us. So I'm like, if we're going to try to help the Canadians that are already here, and they were born and raised to accept and adopt a particular form of lifestyle in terms of their economic compensation or wages for what they produce. Now, if we keep plundering these third world or emerging countries that aren't on the quite level economically as countries such as Canada, is yes, it will be beneficial for them people to come here, but the Canadian citizens that once again have to pay, up to, just for a typical worker in Canada today, you're talking about what, 46% of your wages that's going towards these forced income and redistributive schemes. So once again, that's already tying one hand and foot behind the back. And some of those schemes are actually to pay the government to find these people in these temporary foreign worker programs or to use for these mass immigration programs. So it wouldn't be fair to force me to pay for or subsidize someone that's competing for, whether it's housing or, like I say, wages. Like, no one, even in a union setting, I don't think anyone would be stupid enough to ask me to, give a portion of my paycheck. Actually, no, they do that. So that's why I'm not a fan of unions either. But no one should ask me to force or subsidize my competition in any terms or any area of the marketplace. And that really, at the end of the day, is what has been happening. And because big government initiatives has created not just an influx of immigration, but of outsourcing or offloading a lot of the jobs or opportunities in here, because they can get it much cheaper through slave labor or wages in third world or emerging countries. To me, I want to hold people to a standard where we're trying to raise and elevate each other. That at the end of the day, that's what it is. To me, the big government initiative is all about raising us down to a more common lower denominator. And that's not what the West was built upon, as far as I'm concerned. We were supposed to be trying to elevate what it is to be free economically or socially. And I don't want to contribute to making the domestic citizens in our country, such as Canada, have to compete with people that haven't reached or attained that level. I'm not blaming those people, but the government is placing us as if we're supposed to line up under equal representation, which is the case, right?
So sure, I'll jump in here. So there are three kind of separate but interrelated points I think that you're making. One is that trade agreements are managed trade, right? And they're full of cronyism. For example, the Trans-Pacific Partnership was it created a little bit more free trade, but at the expense of intellectual property imperialism, right? So it extended U.S. IP law across the world. And so, libertarians, I think a lot of us understand that intellectual property is a euphemism for government monopoly, right? It's to say that government grants certain corporations or individuals a monopoly over using their property in a particular way. And I can't use my property in that way. I can't arrange it in that pattern. So that's certainly one aspect. Another aspect of managed trade of these things like the TPP are that they remove sovereignty and they put it into kind of globalist or international courts or extrajudicial courts away from our standards of justice, and they mandate infringing your privacy as well. So all these things are bad about managed trade. Now the next point is on subsidizing immigrants, right? And right now, I was looking up some stats before I got on the call here, and I think I read a Fraser Institute study from 2011 that said that that immigrants on average are costing taxpayers about $30 billion a year. So on net, the average immigrant is taking $5,000 a year from the system. That's the difference between, and of course, it's expensive to run Canada's welfare, right? We have socialized medicine, we have public schools, we have all this public infrastructure and welfareism. And so even immigrants that are taxpayers, they're not paying enough tax to pay for the welfare system in Canada that the rest of us are paying for. So the Fraser Institute has calculated the deficit on average of about $5,000. So on net, they drain about $5,000 per immigrant from the Canadian economy. Of course, like you and I would agree, that's not about the immigrants That's about the welfare system. The welfare system, and I don't care whether it's an immigrant or some other Canadian taking my money, whether my wealth is being redistributed, doesn't matter. The fact that the money's being stolen from me, that's the problem that I oppose here, right? So we got to get rid of the welfare state, because regardless of whether we have immigrants or not, that is draining us. It's an immediate threat. Now, the third point is about immigrants coming here and lowering wages or something like that. And, I think that most economists would agree that that free movement of labor, if we're looking strictly in economic terms, that free movement of labor and goods increases productivity, right? So when people can move from an area of low wages to high wages, or employers can manufacture, can move their productivity to areas of low wages, that makes us all better off, because it increases productivity. So the goal of economic policy is not to create jobs, it's to create productivity. In fact, robots have run us out of jobs for a couple of centuries, right? Ever since they invented the cattle yoke, it ran people out of jobs. You no longer had to work from before dawn till after dusk. Well, and now you were underemployed. But that was a good thing, because you didn't have to work as hard to get the same amount back. And that's the point, right? And I remember when I was a business owner in Fort McMurray, I did audio and video production, and I did a lot of work with corporations, but I couldn't sell as much product as I want. I had to have a very high price point. I had to pay people between $50 and $75 an hour to get people to work for me to do a job that, in other places I might have been able to pay $20 an hour. Now, that meant I couldn't produce as much, because people didn't want to pay the high prices. They had a limited budget. Now, had I been able to get, say, 10 workers for the price of one worker, I would have been able to lower the price. I would have been able to quadruple or even 10x my productivity. So I would have now created 10 jobs where before I only had one. So I actually increase employment, increase productivity by having low wages. So this idea that a lot of people subscribe to this idea that there's a certain number of jobs in Canada, and obviously if immigrants come here, now there's fewer jobs for the rest of us. Well, that's just not true. That's just not how economics works, right? So those are the points I would make. We shouldn't be afraid of wages going down. We should be afraid of productivity going down. We should be afraid that other countries are more productive because they have less regulation. The fact, for example, that I can buy an iPhone for $1,000 is testament to the fact that it's made in a low wage area in China, right? If it were made here in Canada under our regulatory environment, that phone would cost at least 5 times as much. It would cost probably $5,000. Would I be better off because of that? No, I wouldn't. I would be worse off. I wouldn't have an iPhone right now. I'd have some other cheap phone that doesn't do as many things as I'd like it to do, for example. So that's how economically we should be focused on productivity. So we have to get rid of the welfare state. We have to be careful of these trade agreements, managed trade, but we shouldn't be afraid of immigration on economic terms, all other things being equal. But there are other reasons to be concerned about immigration, right?
Well, could I just respond real
sure.
quick before you continue on there, Tim? Because
Sure.
if we get too far, I'll forget what I was saying.
Sure.
Sorry, buddy. But so I get what you're saying, but economic efficiency at all costs is not somewhere. Or here's the thing. To me, I'm willing to play, like I say, out there on that economic stage. Like I say, if there's a bunch of people who want to set up particular games as far as how we interact and engage economically, let's do that. But like I say, even if you're putting forth the premise of economic prosperity at all costs, but that's still kind of in a way, and I'm sure you'll recognize this too, is, back in the day, you could have made an economic argument for going to Africa and plundering the slave from that country,
Sure.
bringing them to the plantation. There was an economic argument for sure, and it was a viable economic argument. The problem is, though, is if we're not going to have any, like, if economics, just to get from point A to B, if we're just going to use sheer economics as the driver without any morality or ethics involved, then like I say, if we're going to function in that environment, then let's all at least acknowledge that's the environment we're functioning on, and I'll reflect and I'll adopt how I interact, to make sure that I'm going to do okay in that. I don't want to function in that, but if that's the environment I'm going to function in, it's like, to do what's best for me, I'm going to adopt to function in that environment. But like I say, under Western capitalist systems, predominantly, they always had that combined and that conjunction that had Christianity intertwined. It was very intertwined, right? It was this morality and this kind of ethic. So we do kind of try to hold ourselves to a particular standard, and as far as the West, because we didn't want to play that game. We've seen how lots of countries around the world did try to play that, but actually it was bringing in ethics and morality into the equation in terms of economic interaction that actually brought the West out of that equation. Now, like you were saying earlier, well, what about, if you could have those 10 employees instead of one? If you could get 10 employees, so if $15 an hour is what you'd pay a Canadian, well, if you could only pay someone $1 an hour, matter of fact, you could have 15 of those people. But we also understand the Pareto distribution principle, and we also understand incentives, right? Matter of fact, actually, that person that's making $15 an hour, even though that's like 14 times higher than the $1 an hour, but that has created a whole lot of incentive. And if you take that incentive, combine it with a proper hiring practices where that person is actually part of that 10% in the Pareto distribution principle, they might actually, that $15 an hour might actually produce one human being that produces more than the next 20 or 30 people, right? That one person might be someone that came up with the idea to invent a whole new piece of machinery that can actually help produce things in a much more efficient level than 100 people. Well, right? Slavery. That's how it ended. And we figured out these machines that could pick cotton rather than hiring a bunch of slaves and security to whip them and beat them and chase them out in the field. So like I say, to me, at the end of the day, and I totally get where you're going with this, and I agree with that. But to me, it's still, we can incentivize in the West. To me, incentive is the core driver, especially in terms of our economic interactions.
Yeah, and I certainly didn't mean economics at all costs, right? I mean, I certainly don't support slavery or anything like that.
Oh, no. I just brought that up just, but
no, for sure. And the question for me is when then does government have a right to? You can make an argument, a valid argument. I think Hoppe makes this argument. In fact, my immigration platform with the Libertarian Party is largely based on Hoppe's writings about invite-only type style immigration. But he very clearly says you can't force integration any more than you can force exclusion, right? So, so we can't initiate force to exclude someone from inviting someone here that they'd want to invite, either for whatever reason, whether it's economic or familial or whatever. But the reality is that the invitee can't impose economic costs or externalities on the nation, right, on the community, right? And that's the problem we're in right now. And this is why, yes, I agree, we have to live in the real world. Right now we have government run infrastructure, and so we just can't open up the doors. We have to have some kind of sane policy in place. Now, one of the other things I want to address is another valid concern with immigration, which is if we shift the demographic too far, we're going to, if we import a lot of people from illiberal cultures and illiberal nations, well, eventually Canada will be very illiberal. I mean, I would argue that we're already pretty illiberal as it is. The biggest problem is probably the liberal elites who are very illiberal, right? Creating all these problems for us, and that's a problem that we have to figure out how to solve as well. But that's a legitimate concern, right? That we shift demographics. Mises and Rothbard and Hoppe and all these people have said, even Mises and Rothbard, right, who are people that are hardcore libertarians who were generally for relatively unrestricted immigration. They even said that, look, you have to take into account culture. Like, the nations shouldn't be defined by the state, right? They should be defined as kind of like how you would define a forest. Like, there's a forest there because there's a bunch of trees that are similar in a general geographic area. Well, a nation is maybe a shared culture and ethnicity and norms and practices. but that ought to be determined, from the ground up, not from the top down kind of thing. But there is something to be said about a totally different nation coming in and replacing that nation. You no longer have a nation anymore of shared identity, shared culture, shared beliefs, and all those kinds of things. And so, we need to consider that. We need to protect against that, because if the norms in this area change, like we said at the start of the show, culture or government is downstream from culture. And so if we, and I was reading a stat, so the danger here is that immigrants come here and they vote for bigger government, basically. And there seems to be a lot of evidence that this is happening. Immigrants to Canada tend to be fiscally liberal and socially conservative. So the exact opposite almost of libertarian, right? Who are generally described as fiscally conservative and socially liberal or something like that. And so that ought to concern us a bit. If we have an influx of people that would be described as the opposite of libertarian. And again, here the problem is government again, right? Because we have mob rule, we have democracy, and it's like everyone who has an opinion, their opinion matters. And it would be like, I look at every election as an incitement to violence. It's real hate speech, right? Because you're voting, you're asking the government to do something for you. I mean, if I ask someone to put a hit on my wife, would I have any responsibility in her murder then?
For sure.
I probably would, right? If I asked Justin Trudeau to raise taxes on the rich, to steal more money, do I have any responsibility? So to me, part of me thinks that a libertarian government would prohibit that kind of criminal conspiracy, right? If you conspire to rob other people, then you're guilty of conspiracy. And maybe that ought not be allowed. I might be unpopular for saying that I would make it illegal to vote for anything other than libertarian. I might be accused of being biased here, but I'm just trying to outlaw criminal conspiracy. So the problem in Canada, the problem here is that criminal conspiracy is legalized. It's not that we have these people here that would love to conspire if they had the opportunity. It's right now they're incentivized to conspire against other people. They're coming here, and accepting welfare. And I think we see a demographic change. The other thing I thought was interesting, I'd like to get your take on this. I was reading a Bank of Canada report this morning about immigration in the U.S.
Can you keep that real quick though, Tim?
Yeah,
just
sure.
Keep that right in your mind, because I just want to respond to one other thing you were saying. I'm going to out you right here.
Yeah.
Tim is talking from a philosophically principled position. All right. This is the problem with being the leader of a fucking political party, which is, I don't know how you even square this one, Tim, but I love you for it, buddy. But you're taking, but I really do. But you're taking a philosophical principle position.
That's right.
That's not a political stance. So even though I'm talking to Tim Moen today, this is Tim Moen the man, not Tim Moen the politician, which is why I've said so many times, as much as I love these guys, and I do, Tim knows, tell you, I'll even admit it myself, I'd make the worst politician on the fucking planet. And I'm not kidding. And that's why me and Tim.
You can't get much worse than me, Bennett.
I'm sorry, but that's what I'm saying. Look at this is a perfect example for anyone to see. Look at the principal position the man takes. How you think he's going to work in the political? Why do you think libertarian parties don't do very well? Why? Because we're not genuinely politicians. That's why. That's what, but we're trying our best. That's what's happening nowadays. Is we're just trying our best. How can we find some way to reduce the amount of harm imposed on us? Right. That's all we're doing at the end of the day. And I like I say, I have a tremendous amount of respect for Tim for doing what he's doing. And at least at the very end of the day, maybe at some point in time, that's why I love actually having a party such as the Libertarian Party can. Even though I recognize right now in the current environment we live in, it's not exactly the best platform to use, because everyone wants to run to using the gun in the room. Whereas Tim's saying, let's keep that gun at bay. But like I say, maybe sometime we will get to that point where we can all, unite under the principal positions of a Libertarian Party. But once again, it's a little bit of an oxymoron. But at the same time, this is how important it is to have people like Tim offer their stance philosophically, but still give you a little bit of an out if needed. It's necessary. To me, have a libertarian party in any country, that's your in case of glass, right? Or sorry, in case of emergency, break glass. Because we don't, like I say, we don't want to ever pick up that metaphorical gun in the room. And I'm sure Tim's not that way. But at some point in time, if we get too far astray from what liberty truly represents, well, then the philosophical and the political might very much have to come together, which is, like I said, I don't know how that's going to play out in the 21st century, but we might get to that point eventually. Sorry, Tim. Sorry, I went on a little bit.
No, that's okay. No, I have quite a bit to say about that, but I just wanted to run this by you first. I thought it was interesting. This Bank of Canada report I read, it's from 2018. It was analyzing how immigration affects Republican votes. Okay. And what they found in this study was that highly skilled immigrants that come to the US tend to vote Democrat, and low-skilled immigrants increase the Republican vote. So high-skilled decrease the Republican vote, low-skill increase the Republican vote. On net, if you take them all together, it increases the Democrat vote, because I guess maybe there's more highly skilled immigrants than low-skilled or something like that. But I thought that was interesting. So the people most likely to be on welfare and most likely to be kind of net drains on the system were the ones that were most likely to vote for smaller government. Now, how do you square that one? Now, what policy do you put if you're a pragmatist, if you want smaller government? Do you open up the floodgates to Mexico and shut them to Norway? What do you do to increase the Republican vote, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, these are the games that happen when you are trying to engage in pragmatic. But which brings me to your comments there about the philosophical and the political and the purpose of a libertarian party. And again, I think that the metric of success for any political party when it comes to creating a smaller government and more liberty is not how many votes you get, not how many seats you get. You can't legislate against culture. So the metric of success is how many libertarians are you creating? That's it. And how do you create libertarians? Is it by advancing a pragmatic message? We need 15% tax, and we need to cap immigration at this, and we need to, we ought to have freer milk and stuff. And yes, we shouldn't be part of UN, but yeah, NATO's important, and maybe we need to bomb a few countries. Like, we just need to be pragmatic here. Like, whatever's going to get us votes right now to get us into, there are. I know there's a conservative, a CPC member of Parliament who was taking heat from a local talk show host here in Edmonton because he wore a shirt on an airplane that said "taxation is theft," and I thought, yes, buddy. So I know, and I've talked to a lot of these conservative MPs. There are some hardcore libertarians in the belly of the beast, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I couldn't do it. God bless these guys. I'd rather them there than someone else. But I just don't know what good they're doing. Are they creating more libertarians? Have they done anything to slow the growth of government? I don't think they have. I think it's
Well, no, I just wanted to iterate though, because maybe I didn't put this in enough there, because actually I want to make sure this is very fundamentally understood. Is I'm saying you, Tim Moen, as a person that understands philosophically in the principal position you take, I'm saying is politics, like you say, politics is downstream of culture. So let's say if that stream runs into a big pile of cesspool of sewer fucking ridden shit, right? It's like, I'm saying I like the fact that Tim prefers to be up here rather than delve down to that cesspool. That's what I'm saying. But the ones that are down in the cesspool, okay, but somebody has to be down there at least representing that libertarian idea, right? Representing that message down there in the cesspool. All I'm saying is I don't even like to go down there, but I'm saying I'm willing to move around, to help in any way I can. But I'm very glad that you, as a principled position, but although you do, once again, you keep on the back burner the fact that we do have politics to use, because politics exists. Like we can try to ignore and avoid politics, but politics doesn't ignore and avoid us. So I'm glad that you still bring us that option to the table, to bring politics to the table in terms of libertarian. But I think, like I say, I'd rather hold you to your standard that you hold yourself to, is you're much higher to the political realm. You're in the philosophical and the principled realm in terms of ethics and morality. So I'm glad that you bring that to the table and aren't necessarily just raising down to just play in the realm of politics. That's what, like I say, that's why I've always said for a long time. And I mean, come on, who is more? I'm a huge fan of Ron Paul, but even he would admit libertarians aren't the most effective politicians, right?
Right. Well, I mean,
Because you have to be a liar. You have to be willing to sell your soul to the devil. And I think I'm complimenting you by saying that, Tim, you're not the best politician.
No, yeah, that definitely is. You know, I would see it as an abject failure if I became prime minister, because that meant either I sold my soul or you know, Canadians were just too stupid to realize I wasn't going to give them free stuff. You know, but yeah, I mean, Ron Paul is a perfect example. I mean, Ron Paul is why I got into this, right? It's because, you know, for the longest time I eschewed politics. I said, I don't want to be anything to do with supporting the plantation we live on. And I just saw participation in politics as giving some kind of, you know, and I think you felt the same way. I remember last election, you were pretty hard coming up against me going like, how can an ANCAP do this kind of stuff, right? And there's some legit. Yeah, there's some legitimacy to that for sure. You know, but ultimately what convinced me was Ron Paul stood on that stage and delivered a principled message. It didn't get him the votes he needed to become president, but it converted a lot of people to liberty. And I just couldn't ignore that. And I said, look, there's a stage, there's spotlights on it. There's a microphone, there's an invitation. Why would I say no to that? When I have an important message? And yes, it's not a popular message. It's not a message that's likely to get me many votes at all, but it's a message that will shift culture. And I think there's evidence that it is shifting culture, that libertarians are making a difference. More and more politicians are identifying as libertarian. You know, I think the rise of Bernier is largely because of libertarians' presence. I mean, you know, it wasn't Bernier voting the status quo in Parliament for 2.5 turns, voting to go bomb Libya, going to support corporate bailouts, and just voting like, you know, he was no Ron Paul in Parliament, right? So where did this movement of libertarians come that want Austrian economics, that want free market, that want property? That's from you and me, and that's from us. Sacrificing everything to do this, right? I mean, you know, I cashed in my retirement to do this. I'm an idiot, probably. You know, sometimes I wonder if Canadians, whether I should have even wasted that money on them or not, whether I should just let them maybe get the government they deserve. But, you know, I did it because I believe in it, right? So, and that, I think it is making a difference. I think it is making a difference.
That's the thing, Tim. You have made a tremendous amount of difference. It just, like, not on the political realm. And I'm kind of glad that's the case, like I say. And at some point in time, and actually, you know what, when the whole thing, and you're right, 100%, because, you know, I've gone through that whole thing. That's fucked up, man. Like, when I tell people, trust me, when you're going through your little cognitive dissonance moment where you have to break through some of the shit that's jammed in your head. Yeah, trust me, I know how uncomfortable that is because I've gone through it enough myself. So yeah, it's not easy, folks. But you know, if you want to think critical of the issues, you got to be willing to go through your own discomforts. But yeah, like Tim's saying, we've gone through this thing because to be principled, literally, you have to reject government because government is a monopoly for social. But yet we also recognize, but government exists, and we got to still. It's a fucking tough deal to try to sort through. But a matter of fact, my biggest thing, especially when you and Max were talking earlier on, and I'm sorry that I wasn't even involved in that because I was a little bit on this. I didn't even know much about the PBC at that particular time. I actually was really, really hoping that you guys would have come together and actually did exactly what you were saying. Let Max play the politics. And, you know, you could been, whether you're the leader or the main spokesman, or so I don't care, even if you were competing to be the leader, it's let's get, because what I recognize about Maxime 100%, and you probably know this even with Ron Paul, is he didn't do it on the Libertarian Party, is you got to get out there where the media is focused on the spotlight, and the focus of the spotlight's not on the Libertarian Party Canada, right? They're like, oh, let's just pretend that the Libertarian Party of Canada doesn't exist, even though we know it does. And like you say, matter of fact, that party that the media doesn't want to acknowledge exists, like I say, we're the ones that are driving Maxime and all these people that are stepping up the plate to become candidates and supporters. A lot of them are people that have been following me or fucking Tim so it's, we're having a huge amount of influence, but it's like, I don't care. Like, and tell you the truth, because I'm not really involved too actively in the politics, although I've been willing to do so, is I'm even still willing to sit on the sidelines and not get all the accolades, applaud or praise, but I'm still going to try and do what I do. And that's what you're doing today, is we're going to try our best. And like I say, hopefully, maybe if things, how it plays out in 2019, maybe not so conducive, maybe the Libertarian, maybe at some point in time, and like I say, if I ever see the Libertarian Party of Canada being focused or the spotlight is placed upon it, I'll pivot toward that, because to me, that I know that there's those of us that function in that realm in Canada, but we're still kind of functioning in an echo chamber as long as the media is not going to put our message out there. And they're definitely not doing that for you, Tim. And you know that as far as being a leader. If they were giving you, if you even you could dip your foot in the waters, I probably would have gone a completely different way. And I would have, because once again, I'm not that I'm trying to sell my principles, but once again, I have to reflect the reality that surrounds me. And it's like, well, an opportunity was afforded to me. And you recognize that early on as well, where we can all kind of come together. And I'm not saying, once again, that's why I love about libertarianism. We don't have to yield or conform to each other or bow to someone else's wishes and just say, okay, I'll just do that because, you're our new leader. No, we're going to still be like those, it's like, what was that term you used before? Wrangling cats or herding cats, right? Libertarians, we have too much of an independent thought process in our mind. So we're not going to be easily wrangled or corralled to just function under one big giant umbrella. So I'm glad that happens. Actually, that kind of diversity in thought and that kind of independence is why we can't be destroyed. It's an impossibility to destroy libertarian thought or philosophy because we're not centralized. Things that are centralized, collectivism, well, that's easy. You just lob that one figurehead at the top in that ideology and destroy the premise, but you can't do that for libertarians. So like I say, I respect you for what you've brought to the table, but don't worry if you haven't achieved any political success. As you're probably acknowledging, you're definitely achieving a whole lot in terms of success of the kind of principles and philosophy you've been espousing.
Right. Well, I mean, I don't know. I think we're the only party has achieved any political success in Canada. I might be a little biased there. Seriously, like the reason more people are libertarian is because of people like us, right? So I don't think the PPC or Max is popular if it weren't for us. So I take that as some success. It was pretty disappointing to me. That the disappointment here was, people probably know that I offered Maxime my spot as leader of the Libertarian Party numerous times. Now, the reason I did that is because I care about liberty, because I care about this message, and because I saw here a person who has a seat in Parliament, who has resources, who has time, who has the energy that I don't, to really take this movement to the next level. And, I was hoping that later when we were talking about Emerge, that might have solved it, because, he's got a fairly milquetoast libertarian platform. Some of the things aren't even very libertarian at all. I'm not a big fan of his foreign policy and things like that, for example. But I thought if it was attached to our principles and our DNA, then, okay, I can get behind this and I can step back and feel comfortable. But, I'm disappointed, because just imagine if Maxime Bernier, if those signs, instead of saying stop mass immigration, said taxation is theft, or I'm going to end the income tax, or we're going to end the drug war, we're going to legalize them all, or end public health care, or we're going to do constitutional reform, or just something that I'm just disappointed it's kind of taken this populist term where the focus seems to be all on immigration, when the focus should be on limiting government, on hating the state. I mean, Rothbard said this over and over again. You got to hate the state. And the difference here is, there's the house slaves and the field slaves, right? Yeah, and at the end of the day, I think you and I are field slaves. We freaking hate the house slaves. I've
never been an insider.
Right. And here everyone is fighting like, oh man, maybe we can get on the inside and be a house slave and affect change from within. I'm sorry. I hate the master. I hate the friggin' plantation. And, I just, I have too much dignity or pride or something. Maybe that's my downfall, is that maybe I should be more like a house slave. Right. So, I like Max did the correct thing. If you're interested in getting votes, he focused on the most disenfranchised Canadians, which are kind of these populists who are scared about immigrants. But now we're feeding that energy. We're feeding this energy of fear of immigrants, right? When the fear should be of government, the fear should be of the state. And so, if I'm going back to the emergency metaphor here, right? If I'm triage and I am at this horrific emergency scene and I see arterial bleeding over here and fractures over here and life threats over here, and I've got limited resources and I can only focus on one thing. I mean, the last thing I'm worried about is traffic coming from 10 miles away that might create some disruption in my emergency scene. I got to deal with that. And so, to me, it's like you're worried about traffic coming from 10 miles away when there's arterial bleeding right now. The government has me bent over my kitchen table and is sodomizing me in front of my wife and kids, marching them off to school and war, taking half my stuff. Yeah. And I'm supposed to be worried about someone coming from 10 miles away? Like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? This is what drives me nuts, right? And
I'm with
anyways.
You. No, but that's a great rant, Tim, man. That was awesome, buddy. Because I'm totally with you completely there. But once again, my thing is what I have to do to place myself in that mindset where I'm trying to think outside of my box. And like what you're doing is I got to think, okay, this is what I think. This is what Tim thinks. But shit, now let's try placing our brain in the typical, consumer of politics. Right? It's like,
that's fair.
Man, I wish we were all there. God damn it. If we were all there, I'd be like, we would have, matter of fact, we would be doing a little congratulatory fucking patting ourselves on the back today and say, we already won. Because in terms of ideas, we've already won. All we're really doing these days is waiting for everyone else to catch up, right? It's like, but it's a long fucking lonely road because like, damn man, there's a lot of people way far back behind us. It's like, I'm trying my best, just like you're doing. It's like, let's try and get them up to speed. Unfortunately, one thing we can all acknowledge is in the age of information that we live in today, holy shit, it's on fast forward. Like I say, and Tim knows this, just 10 years ago, right? Or actually 11 years ago, if you go back to the 2008, there in Canada, there was 3 libertarians? No, but very, very few. But nowadays, now everyone's like, oh, I want to claim that badge of honor because that's what really, if you understand what being a libertarian is you're a very morally principled human being. That's what you are if you're a genuine libertarian. So people are like, yeah, that's a good place to be. Actually, you know what? That's a very, very healthy place to be. I don't know if I got all the answers. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure I don't. That's a healthy attitude as a libertarian. I don't have every answer, but the answers that I do have are just like 2 + 2 actually is 4. And not using force, violence, and theft, those are good, positive things because I've recognized every time that has ever happened in my life has been beneficial, not just to me, but for my entire community. So these are very entrenched principles. Actually, that's one thing I want to point out right now is actually libertarians, as much as we can flow, in terms of, and some things, actually, this is the difference between politics. Politics says that, people can offer different rhetoric to propagandize people's minds into thinking in a particular area of subject or matter. Whereas a libertarian say, no, actually, I'll even admit, libertarians are very rigid, but only in one area. And that's morality and ethics. And or principles, whichever one you want to call it, is let's be consistent. So if you're saying that theft is wrong, which I would definitely agree with, I just want to make sure that I'm consistent in my views. And government using mass immigration or the temporary foreign, that still contributes to inflicting harm on the Canadian population. And I'm just saying, I don't know how that would play out properly in a free market environment, and nor should I pretend that I should have the authority to say that this is how it should work. I'm just saying that is a prerequisite of being a status is that you promote using the big, gigantic, mystical gun in the room to pick winners or losers in the economy. I'm saying, just like you're saying, is let's get as far away from that as humanly possible. And Max is, even though he still is saying, I want to pick up a gun in the room. And I'm not saying he's really 100% consistent in everything because, well, he's a politician after all. But at the very least, I look at it as just like I was starting this conversation a little bit earlier is he's at least willing to slow down the bleeding, at least try to help us in some way until we figure it away, right? Until we have figured out a better method going forward and how this is going to play out is let's slow the bleeding. And the only one out there that actually had that was a politically viable option come October, like I say, I would love to just say I'll support Tim Moen and the Libertarian, but I think predominantly, and I think Tim probably recognized this too, is how much of effect would it be just to select that, as far as checking a box off? No, as a matter of fact, I've probably helped him a lot more by promoting his views, by bringing him onto my channel than it would ever be to check a fucking box one time. So I will continue to help Tim Moen and the Libertarian Party in many ways, in many areas. But once again, if I have to, I don't want to be strategic, but hey, if the authoritarians are saying, well, the only way I can get out of this particular labyrinth is be strategic in my path going forward is I'm just going to try to figure out what is the best strategy. And I'm not even saying that I have the best strategy, but right now, Maxime Bernier He's definitely disenfranchised with the establishment. That's a clear and concise reality, unless it's all just a big game, which I can't know because I'm not an insider. Matter of fact, that's the other thing. I even said that I would run as a party candidate in my riding in New Brunswick because it was one of those few ridings that's still not filled. I was like, well, maybe and I'm not even allowed to sit at the big table. So I don't, like I say, I've never been in politics. I've never worked for government in any way my whole life. So I might be, even though I'm supporting a lot of these political parties in any way, I still, no matter what, I'm always going to feel like an insider. But I'm okay with that. I'm fine with that. I'll live with that. Matter of fact, I kind of chalk that up as a little bit more street cred, right?
Right.
I've never functioned in the belly of the beast ever, but I'm trying my best. And like I say, whoever I can support, whether it's Tim Moen today or Maxime Bernier out there on the political stage, like I say, whatever I can do that's going to help bring more, whether, like, even if it don't bring more freedom, well, at least it's getting more people think about it because, like I say, he came from one of the establishment parties, so the media feels like they have to cover him, right?
Yeah.
So once again, where there's an area of discussion taking place, yeah, I'm going to make sure I want to interject my voice. That's really what it comes down to at the end of the day, Tim.
Yeah, and that's fair. I have to admit it is a little bit confusing to me to see. I think you articulated it a little bit better for me because I'm like, okay, what? All the arguments people are making for to support PPC over libertarian seem to be the argument that CPC people are making to vote for support them over the PPC, right? We're better on principle. The CPC is better on pragmatism, and the PPC is kind of milquetoast on pragmatism and milquetoast on principle. They're like, if you don't really want super pragmatism and you don't want super principle, you want something in between. I guess that's where the PPC is. But you made a good point. Like that's where the spotlight is, and I guess the hope is, and this is kind of my plea, I guess, to PPC supporters and candidates, is to stop freaking talking about immigration. Start saying taxation is theft. Start saying that we want 0% income tax eventually. That 15% is a step in the right direction, but it's not nearly enough. Start promoting libertarianism. Start promoting the individualism, the philosophy of Western civilization. I mean, that's why we have flourishing in the West, is because of these ideas. The West is built on these ideas, right? And they need to be pushed radically and strongly. Look, you're not gonna, hopefully you'll get at least one seat in Maxime Bernier's right, but you're not even guaranteed to get that. So what happens now after the next election if you don't have any seats? Where's the party? What are you going to be promoting? What's the game plan, right? What is the driving force behind it? Is it populism? Just fear of the globalists and fear of immigrants, or is it liberty? That's really what's at stake here. And this is really why I wanted a party merge, because I was worried about this, right? When Maxime Bernier started to distance himself from the CPC, he didn't put out tweets that said taxation is theft, or let's end the drug war, or let's end foreign interventionism. Let's get out of NATO, the biggest globalist organization there is. No, he said stuff about multiculturalism and diversity, right? So obviously he's pandering right away and setting up to do the pragmatic thing to get more votes. So is his goal going to be to get more votes going forward? Or is it going to be to promote liberty going forward? That's the question. And when he doesn't get the votes he wants and his party doesn't do as well as he wants, what will be the driving force? Now, I want every PPC person out there to embrace liberty as the driving force. If you want to do it in the PPC, go ahead. But I just want you to know the Libertarian Party has been here for 45 years. We're going to be here for another 45. And we're going to continue to get 1% of the vote for the next 45 years if it means we can promote liberty and keep making waves the way we have. And we're the only party doing it. The PPC wouldn't even exist if it weren't for us. Maxime Bernier wouldn't be popular if it weren't for us. We're putting the pedal down, and we're going to keep putting it down, because the liberty is a process. It's a journey. It's not a destination. You can never have enough of it. Yeah. And, so I just hope you think about that.
No, and I agree. Matter of fact, now that you brought that up, That should be the next. Yeah, let's test those waters, especially those you were there in the chat today and watching this. Yeah, let's test just how far Maxime wants to take his libertarian stance and principles, and let's maybe start making hashtag taxation that as the next most important aspect of this, because that is important. Like I say, let's see how far he's willing to go to align with his ideals, because that matters a lot to me. Just like with Tim, because at the end of the day, and actually the little bit thing I've been a little bit, I will mention it right here now. I've been a little bit concerned, especially some of the supporters of the PPC is constantly talking Maxime. Listen, it can't be about one man. It's got to be about the ideas, folks, because like this sounds a little bit weird when you're focusing most of your attention on the man. To me, it almost, and I'm just going to say this, and I know I'm going to piss some people off, but sounds like your brain you haven't realized that you got daddy issues, mommy. I don't know what the hell it is, but learn to grow up and stop placing the man, right? Like it can't be about the man. It's got to be about the ideas. That's what I love about the philosophy of liberty is it's not about Tim, and Tim would acknowledge this himself. It's not about Tim. It's about the ideas. It's about the philosophy. Yeah. It's about the principles. So let's not get all cultish and make this like we're all fucking circling around a man. No, it's not about a man. It's about the ideas. And yeah, Maxime definitely, I'll even agree this, and I'll say this right here and right now. In comparison to Tim Moen, yeah, total milk toast. But what it is like I say, he's someone that's a figurehead of somewhat of the establishment. And because he is a figurehead of the establishment, the very sheer fact that he's that one figurehead, and I wish there were more of them, actually. Holy shit. One guy. What the hell's up with that, right? All these establishment parties. One dude that's willing to step out and leave it, even just to try to milquetoast challenge some of the bullshit authoritarian collectivism that's by everyone within all these parties. But again, yeah, go ahead, Tim. Dig in.
Well, I was going to say, part of the problem is the Canadian parliamentary system, right? Like in the U.S., you have Justin Amash, you have, Rand Paul, you have Thomas Massey, you have these guys that are fairly hardcore libertarians promoting their message from the Republican ranks, and they don't risk getting kicked out of caucus. They don't risk getting kicked out of the Republican Party. You can't do that here in Canada, and this is why I gave Max the shadow of the doubt and believe that he was just a libertarian in waiting, just doing what he needed to do to look for his opportunity. But I think there are probably others in the Conservative Party too. Pierre Poilievre or Poilievre or whatever his name is.
Right. Yeah.
Said some pretty libertarian things quite often.
Yep.
I think, and in fact, I think a lot of conservatives are fairly libertarian, right?
Almost half of them did vote for Maxime, right?
Sure, absolutely. And actually, I was in Ottawa a few months ago doing some meet and greets on behalf. In Alberta, I sit on the College of Paramedics of Alberta, which is kind of the province's regulatory body here. And we were in Ottawa doing some work, and I met with a bunch of conservative MPs, and they all recognized me. They all, were very libertarian leaning, at least. So, but the problem is, and the reason why government continues to grow is because they adopt this strategy of pragmatism, which I think is naive, right? They say, okay, well, we can't do anything unless we have power. And the only way we can have power is if we reflect the will of the people and reflect culture. And so culture in Canada sucks. And so we have to just eat a dick and promote it, right? Like we just got to get down there, get our knee pads out and go, well, okay, that's the house slave mentality, right? And maybe, I'm glad we have libertarian house slaves, I guess. It would be better than having socialist house slaves or people that actually believe the crap that the CPC is peddling, but they're doing what they need to do to get power. And this is the thing that Max and the PPC are going to have to reconcile.
Go with that. Actually, I think that's perfect. Let's just say, yes, they're the house slaves, but hey, at least we got a couple of them.
Yeah. But I mean, this is the problem with that strategy, right? Is that government has continued to grow under that strategy. And so the PPC now is going to have to ask themselves, well, okay, so let's say we start having some political success and getting seats. Let's say we start, what are we going to have to do? Well, we're going to have to change our platform and our policies to reflect the will of the people, right? They're a populist party. It's the people. It's all about the people. It's the people's party. So that implies, okay, we have to try to, so eventually their policies are going to look identical to the CPC's, right? And, that's where pragmatism leads. And that's why it continually leads to government, right? And it's not until people are willing to say, I'm throwing all the votes away, I'm throwing my whole retirement away, and I'm going to stand on that stage and just tell the truth come hell or high water. I think that has empirically shown that that's the only thing that actually gets us closer to a culture of liberty, that gets us a smaller government. But
no,
I'm maybe biased.
No, but you're like I say, you're singing the tune that I've already whistled in my own mind many times in the past, Tim. I'm totally with you, like I say, and I will never even pretend that's why I do these videos, so that people understand that it's not like I placed all my faith in politics. That's why I hedge on a daily basis, because like I say, all I really got to offer is, I might support anyone that's even closely resembling promoting liberty. Is like, I'll afford them some opportunity, so that, especially if, like I say, if they've got the ear of a large percentage of the population, if you got the ear, or if you're bending the ear of the population, I'm going to try to interject my voice in some way. But at the same time, it's never going to stop me from doing exactly what I do. I'm going to be making my videos. Actually, it's kind of good that I didn't become a candidate for any political party currently at this point in time, because I can still function so freely and do what I do and not feel like I'm beholden. Although I think if I was running under,
and it really would have hurt my feelings. I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah,
it sucks, man. I'm not going to lie. I do take it personally, and I know I shouldn't.
No, bring that up, Tim, because say that, man. Give me hard shit.
No, I'm not trying to give you shit. I'm trying to understand the other people's perspective. Like, I see people that were hardcore Libertarian Party supporters jumping on board with the PPC. And every time I see that, it does sting me personally a little bit. If it feels like I've been abandoned, like we were part of this Spartan group, the 300 against the hordes. and we were just kicking some ass and taking some names. And now they've just all kind of jumped ship to
just as you were about ready to put the
exactly. It's like, oh man, now I'm all by myself, and it's not a great feeling, but
I'm glad you actually brought that up, Tim, because I'm telling you, buddy, and I'm just going to say this straight up to your face right here now, that is the last thing I would ever want to do, which is why I want to have these kind of conversations with you, so you know that I would never do that. As a matter of fact, like I say, it's weird how it all played out, but in reality, like I say, I hold you to you hold yourself to enough higher standards. Like, I don't want to race you down into, even though I know you've kind of chosen that for yourself, because like I say, you're just saying you're that in case of emergency break glass. So I'm glad that you do offer us that political option, right? You're saying that the gun in the room, anytime we need to, as a means to defense, I'm right here and make sure that you have ability to pick it up. But like I say, I think you've been much more effective. Matter of fact, like I say, I think it's a degradation if we ever do get to the point where you have to pick up the gun. I think, like I say, I think you've been much more effective as far as affecting the psychology and the mentality of a large, substantial portion of Canadians, including myself. So I like I say, it's not that I ever wanted to sell you short by any way. Like I say, I hold you to a different standard that I would to a typical politician. And that, trust me, the politician way below where I hold you to. Yeah. So consider that actually a good thing, even though I hurt your feelings a little bit, but trust me, I'm not doing it for any reason other than I think you're above politics, even though, like, I recognize that, I have to acknowledge politics plays a role in our life.
Well, I appreciate that, and it does make I know I shouldn't take it personal. Like, I know these people still support us, and they still have some kind of respect in it or whatever, and but like, at the end of the day, I'm not looking for respect or admiration or anything like that. I'm looking for people to be shoulder to shoulder with me fighting this fight, right? And like I had a PPC candidate the other day message me. He used to be a Libertarian candidate, ask me what I was doing with all my old sign frames, because he could sure use it for his PPC campaign. And I'm like, this feels like a stab in the gut. Like, I know that the kid is his heart's in the right place and everything, but I just I just wish that more people had the mentality that I do of we need to push hard on radical libertarianism. Like, the left is winning because they're so radical, right? Because they're pushing these principles, and it keeps, and so they've thrown pragmatism out the window, and they're just going hardcore on principle. Well, we're the people that are doing that on the side of liberty. And that's, to me, the only thing that's going to get us there. And so I just wish, it feels like I'm holding this torch alone sometimes. So,
Well, fortunately, like you say, I haven't, I guess, like I say, whether it's because of how things are playing out, the stars are aligned, but I'm not part and parcel of actually a candidate, or like I say, I'm still going to try a little bit to support, once again, just as just a, and I'm just hedging a little bit, right? But at the same time, I'm going to say this right here in this video, so it's not even in a private communication. Somebody can come back and look at this and point this out to me anytime. If there's anything, Tim, anything that you think that I can do to help you in any way, always know that I'm willing to do so. So whether it's doing videos or getting out and helping promote the Libertarian Party of Canada, because I'll even do that as well. Like I say, it doesn't matter to me. I'm not beholden to anybody. I just, like I say, I'm just one of those people that function in this country. I realize that, what the hell? I don't know. I'm trying to strategize and figure out what's the best way. Where can I pivot to help try to bring any semblance of even talking about libertarianism? And you know what? Even the media, it's like, once again, Ron Paul fucking moments here in Canada. I wish it actually happened with you, and rather than, this milquetoast, this kind of Maxime and the PBC. But the media is even playing this whole game with trying to pretend the PBC doesn't exist. And but you know what? As they do that, they're trying to use it as a negative stereotype. So they'll use the term libertarian with a negative connotation when they're talking about Maxime. But at the end of the day, all I really care about is not the name they're using, Maxime Bernier. I care about the fact that before they get to that, the term that they're describing them as is a libertarian. And to me, that word alone, because then there's a lot of Canadians, because I know there's a lot of Canadians don't even know what the hell the term libertarian means. But the minute they've seen someone in the establishment media, and the only reason why they're doing it is not because they're covering you, because they try to pretend you don't even exist because they're scared to death of you, right? But they're at least using this term libertarian to reference Max. Now they're doing it trying to suggest that that's a negative connotation, just like the hacks down the US that were trying to, talk about Ron Paul in that way. But what they also should recognize, but the media here in Canada, like I say, way behind the times. But once you've put out that term libertarian, there's going to be a subset of the population in any country is going to say, hey, I've never heard that term before. Let me find out what that means. And the minute you've done that, you'd be like, well, wait a minute, how is this bad? You want people to have freedom. You shouldn't use force and non-aggression principle, self-ownership, property rights. Wait a minute. I fucking agree with all this stuff. Why use that at the end of the day to me, which is, like I say, it's all about marketing predominantly. It's not about the message that Maxime, because like you say, the message that he sends predominantly is that milquetoast. It's like, I care about liberty, but only in the political sense of things. Like, let's keep our message restricted to this little box, right? It's like, I get it. You would do a much better job of saying, fuck the box, I'm destroying the box. This is what liberty means. But
well, I wish Max would do that. Then I could step back and relax, take it easy for, I was looking forward to not being leader of the party, to be honest with you. It's cost me a lot, it has. And actually, if anyone out there is listening and think they can do a better job leading this party, hey, Molon Lebe, come take it. I won't even put up that much of a fight. But, it's necessary. I see it as a duty kind of thing, right? At this point, someone's got to hold that torch. You're right. Like, here's what PPC members can do to test this a little bit. They can just start putting out hardcore libertarian messages on their website, where, they can steal our memes and adopt them and put them on a PPC logo. I don't care. It's all about the meme, not the party brand or anything like that. And see if your boss accepts it. I mean, he should, right? Like, he came out pretty hard against Andrew Scheer, not allowing him to promote a libertarian message or a libertarian-esque message in his party, right? Yep. So, promote your own message and go hardcore liberty on it. And I'm sure Max will accept it. If he doesn't accept it, he's a hypocrite, right? Because he accepted, he criticized Scheer for doing that to him, and rightfully so.
No, well said, Tim. I agree. And actually, you know what? Maybe that's what I'll probably spend the next couple of months doing is, go a little bit more hard on liberty. By the way, folks.
Yeah, nice plug.
Hey, it just seemed to fucking flow so nicely there. But I'll just point out, Tim Moen. And what's the other guy that you do that with? Actually, you promote yourself. Go ahead there, Tim, if you want.
Yeah, no, David Birnbaum, and I have started a podcast. David is a fairly new libertarian. He's kind of leaning more into the objectivist camp, so we get into some good debates. But we have a podcast called Hard on Liberty. because we're childish and we like the double entendre there with the name. It's a fun podcast. We explore things. Lately we've been debating minarchy versus anarchy and intellectual property. Like, he's taking the objectivist, drinking the objectivist Kool-Aid, and I'm trying to set him straight on some of the things and explain why objectivism isn't quite as consistent as you think it is, that sort of thing. But we're having some interesting debates and discussions there. So check us out. We're on YouTube. We're on iTunes. Hard on Liberty.
Is it Hard on Liberty? Is that not the name of the channel though? Is it? It's on your own channel, right?
It's on my own channel. Yeah. So, but if you type it into the Google search, you'll probably see it there.
Right on.
Yeah.
And like I say, I've watched pretty much all of them. And like I say, it's a great opportunity, folks, to get a real good philosophical and principled understanding and nuance, because both of them are kind of back and forth, trying to, just like what we're doing today, trying to, think about these things critically. Actually, like, it's people thinking, right now in real time as the events are unfolding. That's the best way to learn, is listen to how people are thinking out loud, because that's what's happening when they're having these conversations. They're not talking from an ideological stance per se. They're just using the underlying principles. That is the position they're taking, which is don't use violent force, and talking through these kind of areas, these topics or subjects, and say, how can we better make that consistent in terms of our morals and our ethics? And I think you guys have been doing an excellent job in that. And like I say, I'm more than always willing to not just watch them, but I'm actually anxiously anticipating every time I see that there's a new video upload. That so
yeah. Well, I appreciate that. It's very difficult to have a conversation on Facebook or social media, right? With the back and forth, like this whole podcast or this broadcast, I guess, started when Bennett made something, and my initial instinct was to start battling him back and forth on Facebook and one-upmanship, right? And I'm like, that's not going to get us anywhere. Let's just do a podcast and talk it like civilized people. And I mean, we're having a very productive conversation, and we actually have way more in common than we probably don't even have any differences, really.
I don't think we do, actually, at the end of the day. Right. With you. What it is we're just strategizing in different ways. That's all. We have the same goal. We all basically have that same focus and that same goal. It's just that, and I'm fine with that. I'm totally cool with that. Although that's the other thing, even though we have different ways or methods that we want to try to make that come to fruition, at the same time, I don't want to sell you up the river, even though I'm not saying that I know exactly how you want to do things, but I'm still going to support you in your endeavors. So even though I might want to try something different, but one thing you can always rest assured on me, because I know who you are and what you stand for, is I'm never going to sell you up the river, and I will definitely support you in your endeavors, because like I say, I know we're head traveling. I don't care how many paths we got to beat to get to that final destination, right? That's good. That's fine. Actually, that's what libertarians should represent, is we're not all going to get to the same destination at the same time, folks. That's not going to happen. Sure. But let's beat down as many paths as possible, so people that are coming at it from many different areas or perspectives, well, at least maybe they'll find their own path. Or they'll follow a path that's already been beaten down by whether it's Tim or me. Whereas if one path was beaten down, well, it's going to be much harder for people that maybe are on the outside or their fringes or in different areas in terms of their intellects or their philosophy in their mind, right?
Well, and like you said, sometimes this comes down to strategy or something a little bit different, right? Like, or I heard someone put it this way: it's orderism versus no particular orderism. Right. So some of us just say, just abolish government in no particular order, like whatever is there, like, abolish it. Right. And like some people say, okay, well, the order kind of does matter. Like, we got to restrict immigration first, then we can repeal the welfare state, then we can, get rid of government immigration controls, and then, that sort of thing. Right. And I'm kind of agnostic there. I think there's merit to both sides. I kind of lead towards orderism. Like, I do think it probably does matter, but I want people at least to be on the same page as me in terms of the direction we're going. We want less government, right? Like, that's our ultimate goal. It's not less immigrants, it's less government. It's not more or less immigrant. Like, that should be irrelevant. It should be like, government is the problem here. Like, let's get rid of that. And if you're in that camp, then you're my ally as far as I'm concerned. And I think a lot of times libertarians, we get into this, a lot of times I think that this whole immigration thing is a little bit like the climate change thing. It's a narrative constructed by the media to place us at odds with each other, to make us hate one another. Like, libertarians, I have more in common with an open border libertarian, even though I'm in favor of immigration restrictions, than I do with an immigration restrictionist who's maybe an alt-righter or something like that, right? Like, at the end of the day, that libertarian and I have the same core values. We might disagree on strategy, and that's what, but at the end of the day, we're on the same team as far as I'm concerned. I want less government. And I don't think that letting in hordes of illiberal immigrants is going to get us less government. So we need to do something about that, because right now we don't have any control over things like democracy. We don't have any control over public infrastructure or welfare, all those kinds of things. And until we get some privatized control over those things, it probably doesn't help us to open up the floodgates. I mean, it's kind of like imposing state enforced lawlessness, right? Like they prohibit us from having a rule set in the commons that we would like, because it's not privately owned. So I can't impose my own rule set there. So the government comes over top of us and says, we own this and there shall be no rules here. Well, no, I mean, there's rules in my household. Like, you don't insult my wife. Like, my table is not a completely free speech zone. You say the wrong thing, I boot you out on your ass, right? I mean, so we're not about no rules. We're about no rulers. We're very big fans of rules, especially don't hurt people, don't take their stuff. And we think that ought to apply to everyone. So we're bigger on rules, even though you could call us anarchists because we don't want any rulers. We really value rules, and we think that rulers are the worst place to get rules from. But anyways, I digress.
No, I'm with you. As a matter of fact, my kids would have turned out to be terrible people if I didn't have some kind of rules. Like, yeah, that's the thing. There has to be rules. There has to be principles, but they have to be universally. Well, I mean, if you want to create, you can do it however you want. But if you want to create, whether you're talking about a family setting or a societal structure, well, you better set up the rules that are consistent at the very least. That's all to me, at the end of the day, like I say, whether you want to talk about raising kids or having this thing called society. Well, if you're going to have fucking rules, then you better make sure them rules are consistent so that everybody that's raised and adopted to learn these rules understand how important and inherent it is to have such things as the premises as the non-aggression principle. If we're going to try to treat each other in a manner where we don't use force as the ultimate means to an end, then, well, what the hell good is it to say that that's what we represent, but yet we allow people to use government as this gigantic gun in the room to impose their will? Well, then we're not functioning in the realm of anything that's even constructively makes common sense as far as universality. That's all I think Tim and I are trying to say at the end of the day. Let's just get closer and closer to that point. I don't know how we're going to get there, because there's been a lot of construction of this, or people that are ideologues that have been controlling, whether you're talking about the media or the education system or the political realm. They've been trying to teach people for a long time, and it's been working for them for a substantial portion of our history, to formulate your mind that you have to align with a tribe. Forget about what they stand for, just that if you align with a tribe, you'll get some kind of false premise of safety and security. When in reality, you should know as an adult, as a human being, that kind of sense of security and safety only comes if they're willing to use force to defend you. But if they're only using it as a means of defense, I would agree with that. But you know that the people that you're aligned with are using force preemptively. Yeah. So if they're using force preemptively, they're not trying to defend you. They're trying to impose a particular idea or a sense of, or an ideology on the others, because there's other people that function in this realm that don't agree with them. I'm saying all these people on either side of the equation, stop using the gun as your means to interact and engage with each other, because it's caused a lot of destruction in our Western societies to the point where look at what we're living today. We actually live in an era, we should be so happy and well developed, because we have access to not just the age of information and all the tools at our disposal in terms of knowledge, but even in terms of technology and our ability to create and produce so many things that are conducive with creating that kind of freedom. We got to get out from underneath this top-down authoritarianism and use the abilities and the competence of all these geniuses in the past that have brought us to this place, and use them to benefit not just ourselves tomorrow, but ourselves the next day and other people around us. If we do that, trust me, we don't even have to vote out, right? Yeah. True liberals or sheer conservatives. If we get the Canadian people in a proper mindset, well, matter of fact, the politics of the day will cease to exist, because people say it's not worth it anymore. That's all.
Yeah.
We don't have violent revolution, right?
Exactly. I've often thought even if we, like, if we can't get people to adopt the philosophy of liberty, if we could get them to manage their own fear themselves like grown-ups, we have a lot more liberty, right? I mean, the reason the state grows is because we continually, out of fear, demand the illusion of security and give away our liberty and get neither, right? So we trade our liberty for the illusion of security. We get neither. I think Benjamin Franklin or Thomas Jefferson said something like that. And this is what we continually do. And that, you know, we don't take any personal responsibility for our own lives and our own situation. You look at any political discourse, right? Oh, I want there to be a minimum wage. Well, what that person is saying is not that I need to go start a business and pay employees $15 an hour. What they're saying is that business that I didn't start, that I have nothing to do with, ought to pay their employees $15 an hour. So there's absolutely no personal responsibility. There's no skin in the game. We all are armchair quarterbacks sitting in our armchairs comfortably and trying to quarterback other people's lives for them. There's zero personal responsibility. So, you know, more and more I've been preaching. I've been trying to figure out how to focus my message on personal responsibility, because I'm a big believer that, okay, we can't control the system. We can't control government. We can't control what other people do. We can't control the amount of coercion that's placed on us and all the ways that we're a victim and oppressed. And for so long, libertarians have been focused on all the ways that government oppresses us and all the ways we're a victim and how terrible. We've been anti-government rather than pro-liberty. And I'm trying to switch that to be more pro-liberty, because I understand that, look, even if I'm in some kind of prison camp, some kind of SJW concentration camp, let's say, I still have choices available to me. There are things that I can do in my situation, starting with choosing my mindset, starting with choosing, you know, my attitude and the way I'm looking at my situation, that gives me more freedom, more personal freedom. And I can apply that in my own life right now. This is why I go to the gym 6 times a week. This is why I study things. This is why I read. This is why I focus on my family. I'm trying to increase the number of choices available to me that, you know, empirically increases my freedom more than begging government to stop oppressing me, which is in its best interest, right?
Yeah. No, well said, Tim. Actually, you know what? I forgot to actually mention that. I should have mentioned this real earlier on, but obviously it's not the most important thing to bring up in this video, because actually the conversation I had is definitely superior to this. But I just wanted to point out, folks, a little late to the game now, but this is actually my 1,000th video upload on my YouTube channel. I totally forgot about that, but I had written down earlier that, yeah, this is my 1,000th video. So I've been out there talking about these kind of things. And obviously I've had past conversation. If you look through my YouTube history and just type in Tim Moen, we've already had a couple of conversations in the past. But yeah, one thing I will say about Tim.
Well, just let me take a second to celebrate that,
sure.
Bennett. I appreciate all the work you've done. I appreciate you putting out 1,000. That is prolific. That's amazing. And you know, each one of those is a meme going out there into the world, spreading positive vibrations and increasing our liberty, and doing something, I think, to oppose the forces of evil that seek to destroy us all. So thank you for being a firefighter in the cause of liberty. I appreciate it.
Right on, buddy. And come from you, I take that as a big old compliment. So thank you very much. But yeah, and I will continue to be doing this going forward, folks. Like I said, to me, I want to support politics in any way, because I realize that that's where still people function as much as, like Tim's saying, we want to be culture to be the driving force, but politics is going to play around, and we have to recognize the knowledge, which why even early on when I heard about Tim, I'm just going to say this, even when I heard about Tim becoming the leader, I did even my own little cognitive dissonance things. Right? How dare you go into politics, Tim? You know,
absolutely, and rightfully so.
No,
those are the right instincts to have.
right. But at the same time, I have to. That's the thing, folks. And we do get emotional responses. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, because obviously, as humans, we're given this capacity for some reason, right? But the problem is you just have to take the time to let your brain. So you have a heart for a reason, right? Compassion matters, but then use your brain to kind of work through some of that stuff. Because, like I say, even though initially I was a little bit shocked at Tim wanting to get into politics, but I also recognize and realize that once again, he's like I say, he is offering us that opportunity when we ever need it. Because, like I say, if things truly break down, folks, and you can't rely or trust anyone out there, at the very least, the libertarians such as Tim, that are representatives of the actual Libertarian Party of Canada, you're talking about people that actually don't really care much for politics, but they're saying, we're going to give you an opportunity because we recognize that the political realm exists. We can't pretend or wish it away. The political realm exists. And we're offering you and affording you that opportunity, which is why I'll even say this right now. I have never donated ever in my life to any political party, and I only did 2 in my life. And one was to the PPC, but the minute I did that, I also did it. Not much. I'm a broke motherfucker. So
but I appreciate it, man.
No, but I did exactly that day. I did the same thing for the Libertarian Party of Canada. Why? Because I didn't even feel comfortable in my own skin donating to a party without recognizing, acknowledge, and of course I reached out to Tim even and talk. I can't sell on my fellow libertarians up the river because I know how important they are. Once again, I'm just trying to be a little bit pragmatic, not saying that I want to sell myself. The last thing I want to do is sell myself out to anyone, but I'm just whatever. Like I say, I'm just desperate. I'm trying to reach it.
Well, and look, I'm exactly where you are. You know, I was at the National Libertarian Convention in the U.S. where they chose Gary Johnson to be their front man for president. And I thought, okay, this is interesting. Okay, this guy has street cred. He was a governor. You know, he's fairly small government. He's not as principled as I'd love to see, like a Ron Paul or something like that. But let's see where this goes. Let's see how this kind of pragmatism plays out, because maybe this is the way. Maybe this is how I ought to adjust my message. You know, because I was always debating, well, should I just be hardcore? Or should I be like very soft and like try to meet people where they are and gently lead them over the line? And, you know, I saw Gary as kind of that guy, right? And so I definitely get the temptation to consider meeting people where they're at, right? And so, you know, I don't know, maybe it is better. What do I know, right? I'm a terrible politician. I know that. And I got into politics begrudgingly. Like, it wasn't any kind of ambition. It wasn't something I aspired to. Someone just kind of wore me down and kept saying Ron Paul over and over again. I'm like, fine, okay, I can't argue. Like, I got to put my principles where my mouth is and my actions where my principle are. And if I actually believe in these principles, like I say I do, why would I turn down speaking gigs? Right? Why would I turn those down? Yeah, because that's essentially what you're doing when you say no to politics. You're saying, no, I don't like, if you think that Islam or radical Islam is a terrible ideology, and maybe you're an atheist and you want to help disabuse Islamists of their belief, and you get an invite to speak at a jihadist mosque or something like that, like, why wouldn't you go there and speak to these people and try to persuade them to disabuse their harmful belief system or something? And that's kind of what I see this as. It's like, I got invited to this church where everyone believes in the state and worships the state and sings hymns to the state called anthems, and worships the relics of the state, the flag and all these other things, and the queen and all these figures. Why wouldn't I go stand on that stage and say, hey, there's no such thing as the state. It's all a figment of your imagination. You know, all those people in uniform, they all believe there's a state. Like, there's a lot of evidence that people believe in the state, but there's actually no evidence that the state exists. You guys notice that? Or no? Yeah. You know, there's and you know, maybe I converted a few people and created some disruptions in their belief system, but you know, that's the best that you can hope for, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you know, Tim, what was that famous one? Let's let gay married couples or gay
protect their
guns.
Yeah, let's let gay married. I want gay married couples to protect their marijuana plants with guns.
And that's so representative of a proper philosophy of libertarianism. Yes, we want to expand freedom, and we don't pick sides on them. And as a matter of fact, I want those of you actually watching this video today, because some of you have got mad at me, and I totally get it, because you feel like because I support the PPC that I've sold myself. But you know what? Like I said, do what I'm doing. No, I haven't sold myself out to you folks, and trust me, I'm completely on board with you. If you reach out to me, you'll understand. I'm totally here with you. But use your amazing intellect, use your philosophy, use your principle, convince the PPC people to move towards, and maybe eventually the people,
or don't even convince them, just do it yourself.
Or just do it yourself. But like I say,
steal that slogan. You know, use it for your campaign. Use any of my slogans for your campaign. I give you free rights to do that. I'm all about ideas, not about power. So I want these ideas to get out there. I want the PPC to be on fire for these ideas, and I want them to be hardcore on them. I want them to push hard for liberty. Like, don't be ashamed of it. Don't soft pedal because you think it'll get you fewer votes or create a stink or be controversial. Just come out, and like, you're not going to get a seat more than likely anyways. So just just get the message out and be unapologetic. And you know what? Great things will happen. Great things happen for me. I got on all sorts of radio. I've been speaking all over North America. You know, I thought it would even impact my career, but I've even had better career opportunities afterwards. You know, people admire you when you speak from a principled space and are authentic, even if the message sounds crazy to them. They appreciate the attitude you bring, right? You can't be preachy and condescending, but if you authentically believe something and you present it honestly and authentically, you know, you earn a certain amount of influence by doing that.
Yeah. And I'm even absorbing all that stuff myself, because once again, I'll even say that maybe I got a little bit caught up a little bit too much in you know, trying to find some familiar type aspects of the PVC. And maybe I haven't been as quite as principled. I'll have to look back through I think I try to, but once again, I'm going to let this whole conversation reflect. I'll think about this even going forward and try to be even more principled in my position and not being as milk toast-ish, trying to water down. Because in reality, and Tim knows this, in my core, I am the most staunch libertarian you'll ever meet. But once again, I still always, all the time, because I am a critical thinking human being. It's like, I can't just rely on like this warm, fuzzy feeling. I got to remember that the real world is going to exist even in the essence of what's going on in my mind. So I'm going to try my best. But yes, maybe I should even do much more, and maybe getting even some of the supporters and getting further and further towards the libertarians, which hopefully some of the libertarians that are disenfranchised. And I will say this too: if you're a libertarian and you don't want to move over and water your message down or your principles down to the point and support the PPC, trust me, you'll never hear anything from me. I will never insult you, because actually, if you want to stay in your principal position, that's fine. That's like, I'm totally on board with that, and I would never say anything negative about you for do so. But once again, the only reason why I'm even doing so is not that I want to water down myself or my message per se. Is just, in 2019, well, you know what? Some fucking political party is going to be in control of this country going forward. And I've seen, holy shit, it's gone so bad right now. It's like, I don't know. Libertarian Party would be like, perfect. We're going back the opposite direction. But like I say, if the PBC can even just put there's like a barrier set up, and we're just going to start heading off, at least pivoting in a direction that's at least going closer to the Libertarian Party candidate. Well, if I got to pick one of the two, damn it. I mean, going down at least the direction that's going in that general vicinity, right?
Well, and I think the opportunity here is, and I hope Max gets a chance to debate, and I hope that he has some Ron Paul moments. I kind of am skeptical that he will, but I hope he does. I hope he gets up there, and I hope that he has some real Ron Paul moments. You know, I'm not sure what they would be on exactly. Like, would he say, let's abolish the income tax, or let's bring all the troops home and end foreign intervention. Let's get out of NATO. What would end the drug war? I don't think he would say any of those things. So I'm not entirely.
That would be a good one, wouldn't it?
What's that?
I think the taxation of that thing. I think that might be something we want to hammer home at least. If you want to get on stage, let's talk about, you know, the inherent immorality of taxation and
that's the biggest thing hurting Canadians right now, right? You know, and then he'll probably, I mean, the biggest thing he'll do to distance himself from his opponents, I think, is talk about immigration, right? So we're going to get this suite of kind of somewhat fiscal conservatism, which isn't really fiscal libertarianism. Like, he's not, you know, at least like when I put out a platform, I put out a 15% flat tax. In fact, Max's policy looks suspiciously identical to ours from the last, which is fine. I hope all the parties adopt our tax platform. But that was just because I was thinking about, okay, what could we practically do in a period of 4 years, right? Well, we couldn't get to 0, but we could get to 15% probably. And so that's how I was thinking of it. But it was a step on the way to, you know, it was less government tomorrow than we have today. And that was my goal all along. And that's what I kept bringing people back to. It's not clear that that's the message that Max is bringing people back to. I hope it is. But my worry is that these milquetoast kind of fiscal conservative policies are going to be branded as libertarian and then attached to this anti-immigration rhetoric, which was what his party will become all about, right? So now libertarian will be forever tarred with this anti-immigrant brush or something like that, and populist brush and milked in there. That's kind of what I'm worried about here. But, you know, I hope that doesn't happen. I hope like there's a groundswell from PPC candidates that says, let's give them a hardcore message. Taxation is theft. Yeah, we got to do something about the drug war. I face fentanyl all the time on the streets, and that's a direct result of the drug war. As a paramedic, I've been exposed to this stuff, and it's not fun.
No.
You can come out and have these hardcore messages and encourage your leader to do the same. Maybe that would be amazing if he stood on that stage and had some Ron Paul moments. That would be awesome. I hope for that. But over the past year, I've become more and more skeptical that that's going to happen, and just kind of disillusioned. But let
me just say, Tim, because I just think about this right now off the top of my head. Listen, folks, it's up to you at the end of the day. Me and Tim, as libertarians, we function in the free market. And that's the same whether you're talking about in regard to economics, but it's the same in terms of ideas. So if you as Canadians, if you want Tim Moen and Bennett Hunter to be the leaders of liberty in Canada, well, then make your voice, put us out there on the center stage, because I'm more than willing to soak up that spotlight, and so is Tim. The problem is today the Canadian people are barely, even a subset of the Canadian people are barely even willing to give Maxime a little bit of a spotlight. So I'm like, I'm not one of those idiots that feel like I'm going to step up on stage where like I'm just going to be left behind the curtain, right? And basically Tim today is most Canadians are saying, let's leave those people behind the curtains. It's up to you as the consumer of our content, right? Rather than me having 7,400 subscribers or Tim and whatever, is get our message out there. Don't be shy. Be a little bit more brave. Be a little bit more bold. If you want libertarianism to play a much more focused role and be up there on center stage where that spotlight is focused, well, then get out there and spread the message and make that the premise, because I'm more than, just like Tim's saying, he's already willing to step up onto the stage. I'm willing. Yeah. If needed or necessary to step on the stage, but I'm not going to step up there when there's no fucking audience. What good would I be to step up on the stage spewing a whole lot of really, really good stuff? But when I look out there, there's like one dude out there like, yeah, Bennett, good job.
Yeah. Hey man, one dude's one dude, right? You got to fake it till you make it sometimes.
But I can reach that one dude though with my right. So
hey, speaking of dudes out in the audience, is there anyone watching that has any questions at all? Have we got any questions from?
Tim, just give me 1 second so you mentioned that, because I was actually going to do this earlier. The only reason why I haven't so far is I have one of these stupid. I don't know if you guys have any of these wireless mouses, but they freeze after 10 minutes. And I was scared to click it. I was going to go look at it, but when I clicked it to start the broadcast, I'm right on where it hits end broadcast. So hopefully if I click it once, it'll only bring it active and I won't actually end the broadcast, because I was actually going to go look onto the
well, hold on. You know what? Do you want me to look and see if there's any questions?
That way I won't end the stream.
Let me just see if I can find the thing. But
what a place to leave my friggin' mousers right over top of it. Sorry, folks, but yeah. But that's the only reason why, like I say, just so you know, it's not like I've been trying to avoid the chat necessarily. And I do see AJ's in there. I see Davina, Point Fire, Son of Rambo. Yeah, so lots of people in the chat, Cat Canada, lots of great people in the chat. Like I say, I just a little scared to hit that in case could you imagine if Tim was in the middle of a wicked flow and I hit that stupid thing, and I probably wouldn't play it very well. So.
All right, here we go. We got quite a few comments here already.
Yeah.
They're slow. Ron Paul's awesome. Canadians are Islam, Sonic family. Stadium's a terrible ideology. Defund the CBC. Absolutely. I would sell the CBC, pay off the dairy farmers and end supply management. Look at seniors.
Nice.
Why government uses taxpayers' money for war, immigrant housing, big business for fracking, vaccines, but does not help help money for small businesses. Yeah, I mean, governments go to where they get power, right? I mean, this is why I think it's probably naive to imagine that government is going to do anything good about immigration. Like, the state is incentivized to grow, so it's going to enact the immigration policies that grow it. And I want to, when I was thinking about what would a libertarian immigration policy look like, I was looking for ways to get government out of immigration. And this is why I haven't done anything like arbitrary caps or face-to-face value tests. I wanted a market approach where people could come here by invite only kind of thing. Right. And as long as there's a Canadian citizen willing to underwrite their financial obligation. So I don't know, maybe only 5 people would come, or maybe like 300,000 people would come. Maybe there's enough Canadians willing to put skin in the game to be responsible for their integration and financially and all that stuff. Like the way the liberals talk, I would guess that they would open up their doors, personal property to millions of immigrants, but somehow I doubt it. Right. But anyways,
but I would agree with you on that. If it was all just a matter of, like you say, private sponsorship, and I wasn't beholden or forced, or my kids to be forced to pay for competition in the housing or the job marketplace or wages.
Yeah, like the one thing that I have trouble with is this values test. Like we don't want illiberal people coming here, but what makes us think that government having the power to screen values is going to be a good idea? Like, how are they, like, just think about if Justin Trudeau were in charge of that values test. Exactly. Like, are you going to vote liberal? Okay, you can come in, right? I mean, that's, or do you think you should have to do bikini waxing on a dude who thinks he's a female? You don't? Okay, well, you're not allowed it, right?
I will just say this though, Tim, just so you know that Max did kind of clarify his position as far as that goes when he talked about the Canadian values test. And actually, if you go and check and see, was it his tweet or is it up there actually as a press release? No, I think it might have been a tweet. Anyways, I'll have to find it for you and maybe share it with you. But he did say his Canadian values test that he's talking about would have been just things that are based on Western values. So the kind of things that were so classical. Right. He doesn't use the term.
Yeah, and that's great. It'd be great if, look, you have a classical liberal test, right? Like if you're a libertarian, you can come in. Right. Except, the only problem with that is that
if you're not going to use
the first two people through who don't get in pretty soon figure out what the answer should be, and the rest of the people know what the answer should be, right? Like, how are you? I don't understand how you're going to solve that problem. Like, people are just going to tell you what you want to hear and come in.
You brought that up because that's a perfect, it's so simple in nature, but it makes people actually think about that issue. And critically is, sounds good in theory to put out those tests, right? But in reality, the third guy is like, oh, just here's the answer to the question.
I mean, I don't know what the answer, like, if you think the state should be in charge of culture somehow, you're going to get what you ask for. Like, it's going to be bad. The more power you give over to the state over culture, the worse it is. Okay, here's another question from Stan Ulch. Why is it okay for politicians to be protected by men with guns, but we can't protect ourselves with the same? I'll give you a hint. It's the reason the U.S. has a Second Amendment. Absolutely, Stan. I completely agree. My platform is going to push for complete unrestricted gun ownership on public property, or on your own private property. You can own whatever you want. If you're on a farm, you can fire off machine guns. I don't care. Bazookas, as long as you're not hurting anyone. And I thought, okay, a good compromise for the public space would be show evidence that you are competent and you can concealed carry, right? So some sort of certification for concealed carry. I want a pathway for people to be able to arm themselves in public, that sort of thing.
Well said, Tim.
And let's see what else. A lot of people supporting the PPC. You guys are hurting my feelings. I'm not going to lie. People who don't vote have no right to complain. Maybe. I don't know. I think that people who do vote have no right to complain because they voted for the shit that we have right now. But
actually, I'm still in the mindset that people that aren't voting, as much as, like I say, as much as people have this freaking disagreement with each other, I still fall on the side that the people who aren't voting are the ones that aren't trying to use force or violence, right? So, I mean, you could make the excuses like they're witnessing force and violence and they're not willing to participate. But once again, you can still only suggest that as a neutral stance. You can't suggest that as necessarily being negative or against liberty. So I'm still always going to fall and default on the side of the people that don't actively participate. I'm not worried about them because they're not a threat to me. They're not trying to impose their will on the political realm. So I still have more respect for the non-voter than even the typical voter.
Well, and that plays into this next comment here by Daniel, who says, I don't know if I agree entirely with that, with all due respect. What if no leader or party represents you? And that's a good point. If no leader or party represents you, what do you do? Do you just vote for someone who meets half your values or something like that? Well, that's not really a motivation. I mean, I get more from watching TV or drinking beer than I do going spending time going to the polls to tell the government. I mean, you know, I've always looked at voting like a suggestion box on the plantation, right? And again, this is the difference between house slaves and field slaves. Like field slaves kind of say, screw you, I'm not putting any bloody suggestions in your, I'll take extra lashes tonight if you know, rather than reduce my dignity and go stuff that suggestion box as if I have some kind of say over how this plantation is run. All I'm doing is feeding you into your delusion and making you think you're a just slave owner or something like that. So I totally get why people don't want to vote. You know, but Daniel, the other thing you could do is you could actually run as a candidate. It's getting easier and easier to run as a candidate. You could run it independently and go out there and say your values, and then you can just vote for yourself. I mean, that's essentially what I did. I've only ever voted for myself politically. I've never voted for anyone else. So you can do that. You know, you just got to get out there, get 100 signatures. You don't even have to put up $1,000 deposit anymore. So that's good. Write someone in. Yeah, you're always stuck with the lesser of two evils, kind of. Tim Moen, try to get yourself in parliament so you can represent. Yeah, well, I've tried, bud. I've tried.
I'd love to see Tim there. Oh man, you know what? I usually would never tune in to question period. That to me is like
man, I would love the opportunity.
But if Tim was there, I'm tuning in.
But here's the problem, and I think many PPC folks will relate to this. So when I campaigned, like we pushed most of our party funds into my riding. Okay. And I went door to door. I had signs. I had a lot of volunteers. I had a lot of social conservative people actually supporting me. Now we had to have a 5-minute conversation because they first of all, they hated the conservative guy in their riding because they saw him as a red Tory. He was very liberal. And they didn't like what he did to Rob Anders, the previous MP. And so they really liked me. But then they Googled me, and the first thing that popped up was that meme, I want gay married couples to protect their marijuana plants with guns. And they're like, what's this? Like, you're not one of us. How can we support you? Well, you know, I just had a conversation with them. Like, do you want morality imposed from the top by government, or do you think morality should come from the bottom up, from the church, from community, from the individual? You know, how has government mandated morality worked out for social conservatives? It's destroyed the family because we have marriage license and marriage controlled by the government. So yeah, obviously it's destroyed the family because that's what causes the state to grow. How's it done on the drug front? Yeah, well, we have fentanyl everywhere. We have hard drugs everywhere. We have gangs everywhere. Again, trying to impose morality from the top hasn't worked out so well.
I'll be right back, but I just got to go to the washroom.
And so the problem here is sin allegria. The problem with trying to get into parliament with a principled stance is that these people, these social conservatives that went door to door for me, all of them, to the last one, called me at the last minute right before the election and said, Tim, as much as we love you and we want to vote for you and we support you, we have to vote conservative because we can't risk Justin Trudeau getting elected. Right. And so this is, I think, what's going to happen to a lot of folks get close to election time. Like if the Liberals are doing fairly well in polls, and it looks like, I think they're up there, right? They're getting close. It's pretty neck and neck with the CPC. So what people are going to have to do is decide whether they love the PPC more than they hate the Liberals. And I think what you'll find is that most people hate the Liberals more than they love the PPC. I know that was certainly true of, you know, again, people vote out of fear. They don't vote for something. And so, you know, part of the problem is going to be getting those votes and getting into parliament on a principled stance. It's nearly impossible, as I found. You pretty much have to vote for the lesser evil. So what you have to do if you want to get a seat is either join the Conservative Party or the Liberal Party and try to work within the system if you think that's the best strategy. But, you know, I don't think that is the best strategy. And I don't think I could say the things I want to say if I was a Conservative MP or a Liberal MP. I would get booted out of caucus right away. You know, Brent Rathgaber was a Conservative Party guy who was whipped by the party. He was trying to advance a transparency bill, and just to import a little bit of transparency into government, to let the media be able to look at the salaries of parliamentarians. And by the time the Conservative committees got through with it, it was like you could look up like 6 people. So he left in disgust. You know, Maxime Bernier was booted out of the party basically for criticizing multiculturalism. And that's the problem. You can't get yourself, you know, it's very hard to get elected.
You know what? Just real quick there, Tim, you said that perfectly. Actually, October is going to be, for me in particular, it's going to be a big old huge gauge or measure in terms of where the Canadian people are at. That's what I look at it today. So the success that the PPC attains, yeah, is not necessarily most important to me. It's where the hell are Canadians at so far? How much more work do we have left? Right? That's really what it comes to.
Well, yeah, and I was just pointing out to someone, because someone's like, well, why we'd love to see in Parliament, I wish you could get elected. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably never going to happen, because I'm not willing to do the things necessary to get elected. Yeah. And I think the PPC is going to be in for a rude awakening as well, because what people vote out of fear. They don't vote for their value. And I was just telling them how all these social conservatives who supported me in my riding all called me at the last minute and said, you know, much as we love you, Tim, we have to vote against Trudeau. So we have to vote conservative and hold our nose. And, you know, I think that, you know, so if you would have looked at the polls in that riding before the election, in the run up, you would have probably seen me poll at 10 times the number of votes that I actually got, because most of the people that supported me, went and voted against Trudeau rather than voted for me. And that this is the problem I think that the PPC might face until it hits like a tipping point of people where they actually think you might be able to win. Well, they actually cast a vote for you. They're going to vote for the lesser evil that they think can win. And that's unfortunate. You know, if we had, you know, some kind of proportional representation or something like that, we might be able to do something, but I have mixed feelings on that.
Yeah, I and I'm with you as far as the mixed feeling too, but I'm kind of thinking that actually that was one thing that I was actually hoping that the frickin' federal liberals would have actually brought about when they introduced it, because even if you can just get one or two people in there, just like I say, a party of one, but there's one person. Well, I mean, look at like even go back to someone like Nigel Farage. You can start but if you have a big vocal voice and you're willing to have put yourself out there on that big political stage, and the bully pulpit is afforded to you, that's a good way to get your message out there. So proportional representation in Canada would at least allow us, that are libertarians or even people that are maybe come from different perspective, is at least to allow the public discourse to step outside this really, really fucked up narrow bandwidth that we're stuck and confined with. Because in reality right now, whether you're a liberal, a conservative, an NDP, or a Green, or even I'll even combine PPC, you're still only allowed to talk about things in a narrow perspective, in a narrow sphere. Right? It's like that's not freedom of expression. That's not freedom of thought. That's still plain politics. And to me, I want to shock the living shit. Matter of fact, if I was standing on the political stage, first thing I do, actually, I've had these kind of dreams, right? I'd be like, I wait till my first interview at CBC. I'd be like, I got 4 questions to ask you. You want 4-question quest to freedom. How do you get this pretense of legitimate government? And then I just go from there. Just so shock the living shit out of whoever is standing right before me, holding that mic up, because it's like, I realize they're trying to catch me in a gotcha moment. I'd be like, I'm going to take advantage of that, which I guess I've already telecasted as a media personality, so they'll never want to talk to me now. Because, that's what you're going to get if you ever put that mic up in my face.
You're an anarchist, aren't you, Bennett?
Yeah.
Aren't you?
Yeah.
You want no rulers.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you want rulers?
No.
Who should rule over you? I mean, okay, you make it sound like.
But well, the minute I did that, the cut the mic.
Yeah. So I had someone, you know, I gave a fairly nuanced answer at some political forum about healthcare, right? About how we want to legalize healthcare, so open up the market to healthcare. You know, we don't want to rip the public system away just yet. But I think once people start using the free market, they're going to not want to use the public system as much anymore. And this guy gets up to the mic and says, he was the mayor of this town. I think it was Lac La Biche. He says, "This is to the Libertarian candidate. I just want to say, you can take my universal health care and pry it from my cold, dead hands." He basically dropped the mic and the crowd erupts in applause. It's theater, man. And the best thing I could say back was, look, sir, I'm a paramedic. I give healthcare. I don't take it away from people. So, and then the crowd applauded, and it's like, it's theater. It's ridiculous. But
great, man. As I say, you're an excellent spokesman. That's why, like I say, I love having you on to have this kind of conversation today, which is why people need to understand that the libertarians don't try to we're just trying to figure out what's the best plan of attack or a best method to try to create more freedom. And we don't know. Like I said, there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. And it's unfortunate that we live in this current realm where politics is always the place where we have to focus our attention on. Because like Tim was saying very early on in this video, it's culture is the driver. Unfortunately, though, our culture has been greatly impeded and hampered by these kind of authoritarian collectivists that have, even though they suggest and they pretend that they've rejected the mysticism of the old world religions of Christianity, in reality, they're just as dogmatic and ideologically driven as their, fundamentally Christian counterparts. The difference is they've chosen a whole new figurehead as their authority for their morality, for their ethics. And they call that the state. But one thing I have always acknowledged, at least myself, even growing up in a Christian family, is at least, like, I've never gone to the church, and I've been to, like I say, Protestant, Presbyterian, Wesleyan, Baptist, Catholic, even Jehovah's Witness. My mother had a friend, not Jehovah's Witness. What's the one that talks in tongues?
Pentecostal.
I've been to all kinds of churches, but every time I stepped into one of those institutions, they all asked me if I wanted to voluntarily donate to their cause, right? So there was no force. Right. The state, the one thing that separates the old world religions, or at least in the modern iteration, post-Reformation, I should say, post-Enlightenment era, is at least they still function under the realm of voluntary interactions. No, they'll try to use the God will smite thee. They'll still try to verbalize and intimidate you in some way, but at the end of the day, they don't genuinely have any force or pretense of violence to use against you. Whereas the state is that one modern religion that does have the pretense of using violence as a means to an end. That's why I'm saying the leftists, the collectivists, the authoritarian among us, they didn't reject the mysticism of religion. They just didn't like the fact that it was done in a voluntary means, and they didn't align with it. So they created their own, and they call that state. And I'm not a fan of people that just want to use violence as an ultimate means to an end.
It's a mafia trying to claim legitimacy, right? Okay, I want to kick something by you now that I have you, and I want your the audience here to weigh in on this. I'm going to outline some of my major platform planks here that I've been working on. I'm never completely satisfied with my platform. I'm trying to perfect it. And it is. It feels a little grimy, but let me lay out my thoughts, okay, about our platform. So income tax we're going to abolish it in favor of a voluntary head tax. So if you want to be a taxpayer, you can voluntarily do that. It's going to be a flat fee. It's not going to be graded on anything. It's just a fee. We don't pay for our bread by a percentage of our income, right? We pay for it as a flat fee. This is the price for bread. So what we're going to do is have a flat head tax voluntary. Now, what that will do,
it's voluntary though, right?
Well, it's voluntary. It's more of a fee.
It's voluntary though.
That's true. So it's a voluntary head fee, okay? That grants you the privilege to vote or run for office.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're not having voting is a privilege. It's not a right here. It's a privilege that you earn either by contributing to your nation somehow, either by paying this fee or by you can also earn your privilege by doing some sort of civil service, military service, or something like that. Now, if you don't want to do any of those things or you don't want to vote, that's fine. You don't have to do any of those things. You don't have to contribute. Okay, so 0%. We're ending taxation basically here. Right. The other main plank is the Constitution. Now, one of the things that drives me nuts about Bernier that has from the start is he continually says, I respect the Constitution. Now, I know on one hand what he's trying to say is if we just enforce the Constitution, we'll have less government interference. There's some truth to that. Although I wonder a little bit because he wants to pull out Section 92 of the Constitution to get the pipelines built. And usually when Section 92 is pulled out, that's to expropriate land from private property owners to get some kind of national project pushed through. And that makes me a little wary. But I want a constitutional reformation. I want to totally reform it. Our Constitution of Canada is the shits. It's so weak. It doesn't even protect our speech fully, right? There's a notwithstanding clause. So I want a constitution that includes free speech, the right to bodily autonomy, the right to bear arms, free trade, and property rights. All those things should be part of what it means to be a Canadian, that you should have the right to speak, express yourself how you want. You should have the right to your own body, be able to put into your body what you want. You should have the right to bear arms. You should have the right to free trade, and you should be able to have your property rights protected. And the government shall not infringe any of these rights. So it puts chains on government. If we had property rights in our Constitution, then we'd have something.
Yeah.
All right. I talked about our Firearms Act a little bit. Let's see. Yeah, we're going to abolish Canada Health Act and universal health care. Military is going to be fully funded. And the other thing is, if you sign up for military service, we'll have like a reserve corps or something like that. You'll get a free military rifle for life. So we'll have military rifles like Switzerland in all sorts of Canadian homes. Dare anyone to try to invade us, then we're going to end central banking. That's another big one. We want to, in the meantime, we're going to peg the Canadian dollar to gold or some other commodity, and then we'll open up the market to money and banking, and we'll wean ourselves off the central banking system. So those are the main things. No taxation. You earn your privilege to vote. We're ending central banking, and we're going to reform the Constitution to protect Canadians and dramatically limit government so that it doesn't matter. What I want, Bennett, is a government that, even if it was run by a communist, couldn't infringe your liberties. Right. And so then, essentially voting almost doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter who's in government, because all they can enact is essentially libertarian policies, protect the individual, government protection, that sort of thing. Those are
what
go ahead.
At the end of the day, Tim, in response to that, I just want a voluntary interaction, engagement in these ideas. So the people that do promote them, and I've said this many times in the past, so I don't care if you're a libertarian or a socialist or a communist, just know that this pretense of social contract, that you just have this pretense where you think that I've signed it some way, is no, let's actually deal with the reality. Forget about mysticism. Is if you want to create, I don't care what your political position or platform is, just whatever your premise is, those who vote for you, those who support you, then they have to follow through with the rules that you set up for your particular social, political, or economic venture. So if they said that I want to agree to a 10% taxation and all those other premises or policy positions of your platform, then by all means. But just let's not pretend that everyone agreed to that by sheer fact of that there's 37 million people in Canada. And because, like, this is the way our politics works today, is 38 or 39% of 60% of the population. So 40% of the population don't even participate predominantly. Well, 35 to 40 roughly, depending on, what time frame or historical junction you're talking about. But so if 40% of them don't participate. So out of the 60% that do, if 30% or 39% of the ones that choose between, so about 60%, you got to break them up between Conservatives, Liberals, NDP, Greens, whatever, all these parties. So even that 39% of people that gave support, if you think about who they represent in reality, it's about 20% at best. Well, then let that 20% of the people that supported, whether it's the Liberal Party or the Conservative Party, then that you've chosen, that you said, I want to interact in this particular game. The rules were set up based on the party and policy position. I chose, that's how I want to be governed. Okay, you did that. Why the fuck do you get some automatic capacity to tell me, who said, like, I don't want to play that game at all? Why by natural extension do you have some capacity to impose that on me? That's like I literally said, I don't want to participate in your shit. That's why I said, like, I'm sitting on the sideline, historically, let's say.
Right.
Like, why do you feel like you have this? Not you, obviously not you, but I'm saying to these political parties, just don't pretend that you're speaking for everyone.
Yeah.
Do your little thing. That's the competition idea. That's the competition of just in the marketplace. If you socialists want to do your thing, well, let's see how that works out for you. But only if the people that support your position in your party are actual socialists. Because you know what? That's the thing. The socialists are like, oh, look, we're doing so. They can say, oh, look at how well Toronto's doing. Why? Because you've been stealing from the capitalists, the ones that have been producing all that wealth in society, and stealing or skimming a large portion of that wealth wealth off the top and propagating that with your forced wealth income redistributive models, and you say, oh, look at all the things we benefit. But that was as a consequence of theft. Take all that layer of theft, and how well would you have been worked out without the capitalists to steal from? It wouldn't have worked out very well. So to me, it's in the competition of the marketplace, or in the competition ideas, is at least stick to your principles. If you want to be a communist, then do your communist thing. But you know it's not going to work out very well. Don't think that you get to automatically involve me in your little endeavor just because I was born in a particular piece of soil, right?
Well, and the hope is, maybe one day technology will solve this problem where, where government doesn't have to be tied to a geographical territory or something like that, right? Like maybe then, if people who vote Liberal or NDP or Green, they can have a different government than I do. Like my neighbor can have a different government than I do if I want to vote Libertarian. If I don't want to be part of your schemes and pay for that, I can have my own thing. But maybe technology will solve that someday. I know the Seasteading Project is kind of trying to solve that, right? The problem right now is that I can't just take my property and move it to a different nation or territory. I have, I can only move myself. I have to leave my property. But on the sea, you can move your property where you want. So you can move your property to different. So that creates a bigger competition for government. Maybe one day we'll solve that problem. Maybe the technology already exists, but people, well, let's face it, government is not going to let that happen very easily. They'll catastrophize it and outlaw it and all sorts of things, right? But
yeah, competition of ideas in terms of how we govern or self-govern. Yeah, that's the antithesis of government, right? So yeah, they're not going to allow that to take place. That's what government represents, is a one-size-fits-all approach towards everyone. Like I say, I'd be fine with that if it was a one-size-fits-all approach under universal ethics and morality that we would all agree on, just like like gravity. I don't have to argue with people no matter what their political leanings are in terms of gravity, because we can test that hypothesis everywhere we go around the world, just like the philosophy of liberty. Most of these things, the reason why we have it so entrenched and embedded in the modern psychology of people that promote these things today is because a lot of geniuses in the past worked out all the fundamentals that have created a universal, consistent aspect of the philosophy of liberty. I'm not saying it's perfect 100%. Like I say, something might enter into the equation at some point in time where we haven't thought about it already. And when that happens, I'm more than willing to adopt that. But under the current environment we live in, that formulation has already been well figured out. The problem is today, the political opportunists are trying to take us away from even acknowledging all these modern advancements that these geniuses in the past has brought us to. They're basically taking us back to tribal. Like, I don't want to go backwards in terms of our intellect or in terms of our philosophical underpinnings or our principles that has created the Western societies. That, it's been like an up and down, man. We've failed and we've achieved a certain amount of success. But I'm like, let's not go backwards. At the very least, let's make sure there's a backstop so that we're not going backwards in terms of our understanding of what freedom means. I'm not saying we're done yet, but let's at least keep some of those philosophical principles embedded into what we know today, because we know how universally consistent they are. And even people that have said, but what about this? All those weird one-off scenarios where you can say, well, individual freedom doesn't work in here. There's an answer for that. Libertarians have put a lot of hard work and effort and thought about these things for freaking hundreds of years to give you that answer to that question where, like, there's this weird one-off scenario where libertarianism doesn't make sense.
How's the cotton going to get picked in this scenario? But you can't answer that, genius. We're going to need we're going to need plantation owners, slaves to do this one thing that I thought of. Yeah, okay, that's imaginative, but that's not.
Already been a libertarian that's already answered that question for you. So right.
Yeah, and I think we've almost done it to our own detriment. It's like, okay, engaging in that game of how are things going to get done if there's no coercion. I mean, that's an endless game of whack-a-mole. You plop one of those down soundly, two more pop up that you now have to address. So I'm a big fan of attacking the root. Like, it's immoral to own other people. It's immoral to hurt people and take their stuff. It's immoral to initiate force and violate property. I mean, that's it. Okay. And now you have all your work ahead of you to explain why you get to violate that, or why these people that you support should violate it.
And what you're going to do with the information when I tell you, like what Tim just said, that it's immoral to own some other person. What are you going to do with that information? I don't know. But just know at the very least, I, as a sovereign individual, you'll never fucking own me. Why? Because I understand philosophically that I'm never going to be a slave to anyone. So you'll have to not just use violence, but you'll have to make that the onus on yourself to bring that to me, because I'm not willing to fall for your. That's all I want. I want more and more Canadians to put themselves in the mindset where, like, yes, people still are going to believe some really weird mystical concepts. They're still going to have a little bit of authoritarianism entrenched inside them when they feel there's a failure in somewhere, whether it's in their social prosperity or their economic prosperity. I understand people are still going to try to cause harm to people. That's never going to go away. That's actually what a libertarian, we fully understand. Actually, when people paint libertarians as utopians, no, I mean, what freedom means, that might, the concept of what libertarian principles, that you might say that that's utopian, but no, if you understand how a libertarian perceives that, is there's nothing utopian about it. I'm saying that's the ideal, but what makes sure that I'm not an idealist or utopian or mystical in my concept is the sheer fact that I do promote the free market. It's because I don't believe that government, by placing that mystical pretense of force in the hands of some overarching authority, is going to create the kind of freedoms that I want. Actually, the only thing that's actually going to function is if there isn't an overarching mystical entity or a monopoly of force or violence. Doesn't mean that violence isn't going to be imposed upon me, but at least if most of my peers that live in my community don't believe that someone has the pretense of authority to use violence against me, if someone broke into my home with a ski mask on, all my neighbors, whether they're willing to help me or not, they're all going to acknowledge that that was a criminal. That person did wrong. But if you can trick my neighbors to think that even when someone breaks into my home and steals my income, if you could trick my neighbors to think that, oh, that's a good thing. It's like, well, that's where I feel that I'm really, really in severe danger. At the very least, I don't know how neighbors are all going to react, but I hope at the very least that my neighbors do understand that theft is wrong, no matter who the hell's doing it, right?
Yeah, and at least an armed robber doesn't pretend he's something moral and get all these accolades, right? When a government enforcer comes and takes my stuff, they think they're doing the highest good, and everyone else does too. So it's almost worse. But yeah, I mean, this idea that libertarians are utopian thinkers, like we get that from conservatives quite a bit. From the left, we get that we're dystopian thinkers, right? We want the poor starving and people dying on the streets and complete lawlessness or something like that. And then there's the conservatives who think that we're looking for some unachievable future or something like that. All I'm saying is no, just stop stealing my stuff and hurting me. Just that. I don't know if that'll make my life better or not. I just don't want you to do it anymore. That's enough. And I kind of look at statists as these people who are constantly trying have this mystical or utopian idea that if they just point guns enough times in the right places, that good things will happen and they'll be able to create a better tomorrow. That is crazy thinking. You can't produce value by pointing guns. I mean, it reminds me of that Simpsons episode where he joins the NRA and he uses his guns to like shut off his lights and open the fridge, and like he's just, no, that's it's you got to actually do something in this where you got to provide value. That's how you create a better tomorrow, and you have to be free to provide value and create value, and pointing guns does the opposite of that.
Exactly. Well, it would be the same thing if I raised my sons, right? Of course, when they were young and innocent and defenseless against my big, gigantic self compared to them, I could have used force as the ultimate tool. And it might have been proven to be beneficial, and I'm sure it would have in the short term. But in the long term, all I've done at the end of the day is taught my kids that might makes right. Use force as the ultimate to an end. So they might not necessarily bring that back to me, although they might. Right? If I taught them that, they might use that back towards me. So I'm already in immediate threat and danger by sheer fact that I taught them that's a good thing and that's a conducive way to carry out things or to get your way. But it doesn't just teach them that in terms of my relationship with them, but it's also done a detriment because now that's how they're going to treat everyone else they're going to interact or engage with. Matter of fact, by teaching my kids to not use that, my kids, matter of fact, I can live today and have two sons that actually are very independent, staunchly independent, will stand in defense of the freedom, but I don't fear for their harm or fear that people will harm them. Why? Because I think in most circumstances, they don't come across as being abrasive or authoritarian in any way. And they do have that live, let live mentality. So they're at least reducing any potential of any hardship being imposed on them by sheer fact that they're taking a good moral stance on their social and economic issues. Once again, doesn't deny the fact that there might be something might happen to them at the end of the day. But once again, I'm all about harm reduction. but we're going right back. We're circling back to the very beginning of this conversation is we libertarians, we just want to reduce the amount of harm that's happening out there, right? And whatever we can do to make that greatly reduced in ourselves, then, like I said, that creates a healthy society where now we're not necessarily concerned. And that's the problem with big government. Big government has made it so that we have to be concerned with things that shouldn't. Like, if my neighbor is gay, why in the flippity hell should I ever care about that other than the fact that government gets to play some role, right? I shouldn't have any concern if that person that's...
What if he tries to marry you, though, Bennett? Huh?
Well, yeah, but that would be using force. I would just disagree with that, and he wouldn't be able to have any pretense to force me into that. Government would be the only means they would ever use to be able to force me to interact into that exchange. Absent of government, well, you do your thing, and I can disagree with it, and I can live my way as I see fit, and you can live your life the way you see fit, and let other people see how that unfolds, and that'll see what's more conducive. And you know what? I'm not even saying there is a good or bad, because when it comes to that kind of stuff, it's like I don't know. I don't pretend to know that. But at the very least, I think we should have a competition of ideas rather than a one-size-fits-all approach. Because in the area of the competition of ideas, then we have this understanding where we are individuals. But when we function under the realm of collectivism, now we've placed ourselves in a tribal mentality where now I'm somehow willing to sacrifice myself for some entire group. But then I also have to acknowledge and understand that all those people in the group that I'm sacrificing myself for, man, there's people that are way fucking worse than I would ever be morally. So like, I don't want to align myself with that person. That's the problem with collectivism, is don't force me to align with everybody. I should have the freedom to associate with those who I deem worthy of my respect. Right. And that's the problem with collectivism, is you've given me no ability to pick and choose who I think aligns with what the values that I represent. Under politics, I'll even say under the political realm, you're forcing me to align with people that I don't necessarily agree with. Although all I need at the end of the day, not necessarily politics, but I do need a finite set of rules, which are principles, and just how we engage. In my own personal social realm or in my own personal home, we've already figured that stuff. Me and my wife, by sheer fact that we chose to voluntarily interact and engage with each other, we've shown that we've figured out the rules of engagement, and we're willing to function under that. It's when I step outside my door, my personal or private property, someone that's a representative of government has now deemed that they have the authority to dictate who I should interact or cooperate with on the social and economic sphere. Nobody should have that pretense of authority as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, well, if I eat 10 bags of salt and vinegar chips a day and guzzle beer and get fat and bloated and get an MI, you don't think you should have to pay for my doctor?
Hell no.
Oh man, what you libertarians, you just want a distant future, man, I tell you.
But if you were a good man and you just were going through a hard time, that's the thing. This is where that nuanced aspect, right? There is no black or white. If, though, you did come say you were going through a hard time, you went through a particular rough time in your life and you did some things that were bad and you were like, Bennett, can you please help me out, buddy? I could really use your help, man. I'd be right there for you, Tim. 100%. Yeah. Just don't put the gun to my head, and I guarantee we'll have a lot better release. That's all it is. At the end of the day, it's like, I'll help you. Matter of fact, I've said to so many people in my life, it's like, actually in Canada, I don't even have this big, I don't take issue with having like this socialized safety net in terms of healthcare, because I understand how important healthcare is to people, right? That's what keeps you alive, that keeps you flourishing, that keeps you existing as a human being. The problem is, I'm just saying, let's just not use a gun. I'll still voluntarily, trust me, 100%. I'll give 10%, whatever. Let's be reasonable. There's going to have to be market fundamentals that are going to have to be the underlying factors that will create a genuine price mechanism for these services that people provide. But if you allow a market mechanism to be the ultimate arbiter or decider of how that plays out, I'll participate 100%. Like I say, just like an insurance scheme, whether it's life insurance or house insurance or car insurance. If you create some scenario where I can have some kind of form of safety net, not just for myself, but to help other people that might get stuck or in a position where they need some help in a particular time frame in life, because we all go through hard times, I'm more than willing to participate in that. Just don't hold the gun to my head while you're trying to do it. Because the minute you put the gun to my head, it's the minute it's like, now I don't want to participate. So it's counterproductive.
Amen, brother.
Right on. So anyways, yeah, Tim. So yeah, Yeah, we're down to about 45 people. So I think we've hammered out this conversation today. I think we did a great job, actually. Actually, we got even far beyond even the border issue and the immigration file, but that's fine. Like I say, because I know these kind of conversations are definitely going to flow smoothly. That's why they go so easily with us. But I'm glad that you participated with me today. And like I say, if you need to, I'm always willing to help you and the Libertarian Party of Canada. And don't think for 1 minute, Tim, the most important thing I want you personally to take away from this is, no, I have not sold you up the river. I'm just as much as your friend, and I will be as long until you've ever done anything to give me any reason or cause to think that you're not who you are. But the person that I know, or the person that I've learned to know who you are today, I'm 100% in respect of your position. I'm grateful that you are offering us that political opportunity. I'm really sad that I actually can't be promoting you and your party today, and I would be, you know, damn well would be, but I'm nobody. Hey, Canadians, make my voice so important, make my voice so popular, and if I get enough of that, you know, where I do have like access to the big bully pulpit, I'm still just a little small bit player, folks. So like, I'm still trying to punch way above my weight. But if you give me the opportunity to have a much more vocal voice, I'd rather, you know, align myself and support. As a matter of fact, I'd love to promote the Libertarian Party of Canada. It's just that I have to function in this goddamn real world that we live in. And most of my fellow Canadians, as much as I try to help them and educate them, like I say, my 7,000 subscribers, actually a lot of them don't even necessarily want to share just everything about my libertarianism. Some of them might just watch my channel because of some of the one issues or single issues that I talk about. So I don't have enough of an influence in Canada to even say that I could be much help to Tim. I wish I could. I really did. And if I do get to that point where I have the ability to help Tim out in a much better area, well, I will 100%. I'll use whatever I have, whatever's at my disposal. I will use that to, I think, create a more genuinely free society in Canada. But I still, once again, I'm still at this point in time in October, I recognize the only viable option right now in terms of politics seems to be the People's Party of Canada under the leadership of Maxime Bernier. And like I say, not saying that, and if you are a libertarian, you're saying, well, I don't want to.
I think it's Scheer, actually.
What's that? Well,
I think it's probably Scheer.
No, go ahead. No, push back on that, man. Tim.
No, I was going to say, no, I think the only viable option, if we're going down that road, a pragmatic option, is the CPC. I mean, that's the only thing that's going to get Trudeau out. But I mean, they're the least evil that's going to have a chance to win, right? Like, well, realistically, the PPC hasn't hit a tipping point where people are going to, you know, they might get one seat. Right, they might get one seat. So I don't know how pragmatic that is.
Well, that's true. Yeah, politically viable. No, I agree with you there. But in terms of the messaging, it wouldn't be the CBC. Now, I guess what I'm yeah. Sorry, I kind of did mess up there. You were right, and thanks for correcting me.
Well, the most popular, tolerable voice out there is the PPC. So I will grant you that. It has, you know. If you can get past certain things, there's a lot of libertarians working for them. A lot of people are trying to promote liberty in the party. You know, it's you know, not perfect. It's kind of like Rand Paul is to Ron Paul or something like that. But you know, at the end of the day, if Rand Paul has a lot bigger spotlight than Ron Paul, you got to go with. You can make an argument that you got to go with Rand maybe on certain things. Or, you know, I like to use Bill Weld more. I just
Bill,
but anyways, you know, or Gary Johnson. You know, if Gary Johnson has the biggest platform, I guess you got to go with him, even if Ron Paul is out there sometimes. But you know, some people want to just stick with the Ron Paulians, and we're there to offer that choice and offer people. And at the end of the day, you know, the only reason. The only difference here actually is the leader. Like Maxime Bernier has a higher profile than I do. He's in the thing. So, you know, at a certain point, I think the people in the People's Party are gonna, if they're really true to their principled roots, if they're serious about the idea of principle, that principle matters more than popularity or something like that, then I think, you know, what we need is those kind of people to migrate en masse to the Libertarian Party, because we're the only people that are willing to throw away all the votes to advance principle. You know, and I think that's the only pragmatic or practical way of changing culture through politics. It's not by getting votes. But anyways, we've gone over that ad infinitum.
But you acknowledge that politics is like that. You basically even admit to in just what you said now is, unfortunately, party politics is a popularity contest. And unfortunately, like I say, I'm trying my best and help me and Tim out. Make what I stand for, make what Tim stands for, make the Libertarian Party of Canada more popular. Because when you're talking about the political realm, folks, in the philosophical and the principle realm, it's not about popularity. It's about being principled. So that, like I said,
and ultimately what we want to do is popularize the ideas, right? It's not about my party or the PPC. Popularize the ideas. If you're in the PPC or you're going down that pathway, fine. Just popularize the ideas of liberty. Like, be hardcore and unapologetic and unabashed about it, and focus on that stuff. We've got an accident scene that needs triage, and we need to put a compress on those arterial bleeders right now, and focus on the big things that are hurting us right now in this moment. And that's taxation. That's Constitution is allowing free speech to be obliterated. It's allowing property rights to be obliterated. It's allowing right to bear arms to be obliterated. All these things are being obliterated, and they need to be, we need patriots to stand up and say no more. We're gonna, it's liberty or death. And come what may, no matter how many votes we get or don't get, we need to stay principled.
Right. And at the end of the day, I'm just going to tie this up right now, finish off by saying, whether you choose to support the PPC, or if you're one of those libertarians and say, I don't want to go the milquetoast way, I want to stand firm in my conviction and vote for the Libertarian Party of Canada, or maybe you're still one of those and caps and just pure staunch libertarians. I'm not voting for anybody. Nobody's my. You make your decision. That's what it is to be a sovereign individual human being. You do what's best for you. But I'm just saying, at the end of the day, all I'm offering, all Tim's offering, is giving you some option to think about these issues critically, and the fact that politics does play a focus or a central role in our lives. Whether you participate or not, that's going to unfold. In October, somebody's going to be our new leaders, right? Our new rulers. And I'm just saying. And
it's probably going to be some avocado toast loving liberal.
I much, like I said, I'd much rather, if I got to bow or conform to a political leader, I'm more than willing to do so for Tim, above and beyond anyone else. But like I say, I have to function in the real world that most people in Canada don't even know who Tim is, or that Tim exists, or that his party exists. Why? Because the media is scared to death. The ruling establishment, no one even wants to talk about Tim Moen. And the Libertarian Party of Canada is considered basically the third rail in Canada, because too many people, there's 4.1 million, whether you're talking about local, provincial, or federal, that work for government. Then you're not taking into account, dairy cartels, the crony corporates that have been bailed out, the banksters. I mean, think about how many actual million Canadians that rely on big government to sustain their livelihood. So you already have a substantial portion of the population that, no matter even if they know that Tim Moen is the most moral and ethical and principled politician in Canada, they're not going to vote for him. Why? Because it's against their bottom line. It's going to inflict harm, because they align with the authoritarian collectivists in the past. And they realize that once you've stepped outside the realm of liberty and have joined with the collectivists, well, it's really, really difficult to escape or get out from underneath that. So once again, but we can rely on that. There is still, like I say, one thing I always keep at the back of my mind is we have that 35% of the people that just don't normally participate. And if we can all get together and solidify our support behind a party such as the Libertarian Party of Canada, actually, we can represent a majority of the voices. If you take, like I say, whether it's 14 million of people that vote, and I did a video a couple of years ago, so 14 million people that chose it to go up and support one of the parties in 2015, which gave the Liberals their majority. Way that was broken down on the 14 million, it was 5.9 million that gave the Liberals their support, and I think it was 5.3 for the Conservatives, and then it was lower than that for the next party. So less than 6 million Canadians gave Liberals a majority government. There's at that particular time, there was 9.9 or 10 million Canadians that didn't vote at all. So actually, if all of us were actually genuine libertarians, or people that just are disenfranchised with the political process, if we all chose to jump into the fray and support Tim and the People's Party of Canada together, right, and we actually had that kind of ability to show some unity, then actually we could put all these other parties and show that they're not a representation of a majority by any stretch of the imagination. And in fact, we would have a much more strong vocal voice and a representation of a larger percentage of the Canadian population. The problem is, unfortunately, we're not there yet. And the reason why we're not there yet is because my voice is still small. Tim's voice is still small out there on the social media round. We're doing good. We're getting better every day that goes by. But the proponents, like at CBC, they got $1 billion budget. They're still kicking our ass, folks, and they still have the minds of the masses predominantly focusing their attention where they are. I'm saying let's get away from that, and we get to the point where, Tim can be play a very, very pivotal role going forward. Don't know if it's going to work in October. I actually don't believe that's the case, but this ain't the end all be all. And October is not the end of the game.
No.
December's
Hey,
right?
yeah, if I could just put a plug in on that theme, please subscribe and follow my YouTube channel, Tim Moen, Liberty Journey. My podcast, Hard on Liberty podcast, is also on that YouTube channel and on Apple iTunes. You can check me out on Twitter at Moen_Tim, and follow me on Facebook, and just let's keep the conversation going. Let's keep these ideas going out into let's keep broadcasting them out there. That we're having an effect on culture. We need to keep the hammer down. We have to keep the message from being co-opted and going down some weird populist or alt-right status branch, and we just need to keep going hardcore for liberty. And you can help out and just share these ideas and educate yourself and promote these ideas. That's the most important thing. That's more important than any party or brand or anything like that. It's the ideas behind liberty and promoting them and proselytizing them and embodying them in our own personal lives. Don't hit your kids, honor your contracts, don't hurt people, don't take their stuff. And, if more of us can do that, take responsibility for our own lives and our own part, I think the world will be a better place.
Yeah, living by your principles and leading by example. That you have no idea how much of an effect, or actually a lot of you probably do if you're watching this video. But yeah, that plays a much more profound role than, like I said,
huge,
as just checking a box once every few years, because that'll expand out to not just your community, but all the people that will, by natural extension, they tell two friends or they lead by that. So yes, do the best thing that you can to lead by example. And at the end of the day, politics, well, it's going to play a role. It will definitely play a role. But if we can change and affect the culture, then the politics will, because it is downstream of culture, will follow out and be a representation of that leading cultural values and principles that we do espouse. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Go ahead, Tim. Sorry, buddy.
No, I was just going to say thank you. Yeah.
No, I appreciate you. And like I say, whatever we can do, anytime you need me for anything, Tim, feel free to reach out to me. I'm always willing to support you and the Libertarian Party. And as a matter of fact, like you were saying early on, I already feel a little bit guilty by sheer fact that I feel like I'm cheating on my best friend by even joining and supporting the PBC, because I have a tremendous amount of respect for you. But once again, just by sheer fact that whatever, like I say, any opportunity that's afforded to me, rather than just staying in the outlier realm where I'm just, preaching from the pulpit the important principles of liberty, but not many people listen to me. I recognize that in Canada, hey, we were given this freaking opportunity where how that all unfolded, I don't know, but that now at least the media is, I've seen the term libertarian espoused within the confines of the established media since the PBC came to exist at least 4 or 5 dozen times. So to me, it's like, even that alone, I know I'm that's pretty low expectation, folks. I get that. But hey, we're getting something. And at the end of the day, like I say, that's the path that's going to lead you. And when you get closer and closer towards that path of liberty, you'll see that big giant beacon that Tim's holding up there that says the LPLC, and you'll realize that, hey, that's a good spot. That's a good place to take restitute or seek some shelter, because I'm pretty sure that that's the place that's going to help you want to carry that burden and assume even more a burden and carry that responsibility to take it even further beyond even what a political party represents. It's a good thing. Good thing. I'm glad that we have a rest stop at some point in time along that junction. Unfortunately, it's the PPC right now that the media is focusing their attention on. But like I say, that road leads one place, and that's to the Libertarian Party of Canada. So travel down that road. We'll get there eventually. Don't be impatient, Tim. We're going to get there. You're going to see that your time is coming. It's just a little bit premature at this particular time, buddy.
Liberty now, baby. I can't wait.
Right on.
Thanks, Bennett.
Everyone, we'll talk to you soon, and we'll see you in the next one. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty. Oh, so I would have messed up. Okay.